Our planet holds spaces that defy human presence, isolated shores no explorer has ever contacted. Their cliffs are impossibly sheer. Their native creatures are utterly deadly. Locations where the atmosphere scorches your breath and the soil cracks under your weight. It feels as though the terrain itself is telling you to turn back. Fortifications hidden beneath years of quiet, closed so completely that the atmosphere within has remained undisturbed for a lifetime. Even cartography draws a blank. These are the farthest reaches where the closest person could be continents away. No greetings, no paths, only gusts, rock, and a heavy silence. Certain sites are marked off limits with official stamps. Others remain untouched because the journey is virtually unachievable. Narrow shafts that plunge into the planet without a recorded bottom. Secure facilities constructed to withstand worldwide catastrophe. Canyons where isolated communities exist without outside contact, and isles so perilous that arrival could mean no departure. These are not locations humanity overlooked. They are destinations humanity was never supposed to find. So right now, wherever you are, settled in under your blanket, relaxing with a treat, or simply unwinding at day's end, get truly cozy. Allow the external reality to soften briefly and accompany us on a silent voyage to Earth's most forsaken, prohibited, and lost corners. And consistent with our channel, the footage offers background, but following along without it is perfectly fine. You are welcome to shut your eyes if you prefer. Simply listen, and we will start. From the crisp, still quiet of the Karakoram mountain range, our journey now takes a sharp turn toward a descent of a completely different nature. This is not a climb into thin, rarefied air, but a plunge into profound, silent water, hidden below the sun-drenched jungle canopy and the vast limestone flats of Mexico's Yucatán Peninsula exists an immense and secret realm. It is not a world constructed by human hands, nor is it one born purely from myth. It is a natural formation, ancient beyond easy comprehension, and in countless respects it remains uncharted and unknown. The cenotes of the Yucatán are genuine doorways into the body of the earth itself, granting access to some of our planet's most profound and enigmatic submerged caverns. To a casual observer on the surface, a cenote may present itself as nothing more than a serene circular pool, embraced by hanging vines and weathered rock. Yet below that placid mirror lies a sunken maze, a labyrinth of stone that extends for untold miles in every direction. These sinkholes are created over millennia as soft, porous limestone bedrock gradually dissolves and then catastrophically collapses into the vast reservoirs of groundwater flowing beneath, leaving behind sheer vertical shafts, gaping caverns, and winding tunnels that can dive hundreds of feet straight down into absolute darkness. Thousands of these cenotes are scattered across the Yucatán landscape. Every single one possesses a unique form, a different depth, and its own silent history. However, a select few descend to distances that dwarf the others, opening into colossal underwater chambers that have scarcely felt the brush of a human fin. The deepest of the Yucatán cenotes, systems like Zacat and the related network of El Zacatán, present a challenge that tests not only the courage and skill of divers but pushes the very limits of modern technology. These are places where natural light is swallowed whole in moments, where underwater visibility fades to pure ink, black within mere meters of descent, and where the crushing weight of the water increases with every additional foot of depth. Some of these watery chasms are so incredibly deep that robotic submarines have been forced to assume the role of explorer where human beings can no longer safely venture. Yucatán, for instance, is calculated to descend over 1,100 feet, a depth far exceeding the safe boundary for conventional scuba diving. Remarkably, it stands as one of the very few underwater cave systems where the National Aeronautics and Space Administration has conducted trials for guided vehicles crafted for cosmic exploration, using its extreme environment to prepare for future missions to the ice-shrouded oceans of moons like Europa. Yet the true enigma of these cenotes extends far beyond mere geology and measurement. For the ancient Maya civilization, these cenotes were profoundly sacred. They were not simply pragmatic reservoirs of precious fresh water in a parched land. They were considered direct entrances to the underworld. The Maya held a powerful belief that these deep pools formed a physical connection between the realm of the living and Xibalba, the spiritual domain of the dead that existed beneath the earth. Ceremonial offerings were cast into their depths, intricate pottery, crafted jewelry, fragrant incense. In certain cenotes, the remains of human beings have been discovered far within the submerged caves, hinting at rituals and ceremonies whose full purpose and meaning we can only attempt to reconstruct. In Maya culture, the distinction between a natural geological feature and a consecrated temple space was beautifully, seamlessly blurred. To this day, many local communities continue to regard the cenotes with deep respect and ceremonial care. The architecture of these underground worlds varies dramatically. Some cenotes open into wide, cathedral-esque chambers where spears of sunlight pierce the crystal water from above, illuminating majestic stalactites that hang like stone fangs from the ceiling. Others are tight, claustrophobic tunnels that coil and twist upon themselves, choked with fine silt and perpetual shadow. In the very deepest of these places, there exists no trace of sunlight whatsoever, only penetrating cold, immense pressure, and a silence so complete it feels like a physical presence. Experienced divers who have ventured into these abysses have recounted suffering sensory hallucinations, an unnerving sensation of being observed, and the pervasive feeling that something immeasurably old is listening from within the darkness. It is crucial to understand that these are not typical tourist destinations. The deepest cenotes are seldom visited, and there are compelling, serious reasons for this caution. The underwater cave networks of the Yucatán are astonishingly delicate and perilously hazardous. A single incorrect turn in a narrowing tunnel can lead to instant and fatal disorientation. Perfect visibility can vanish in a heartbeat with one errant kick of a diver's fin, stirring up centuries of sediment. Furthermore, the deeper an explorer goes, the more critically narrow their margin for survival becomes. This represents cave diving in its most extreme and unforgiving form, a discipline where even the world's most seasoned professionals move with painstaking care, often leaving behind a trail of subtle markers to guide their safe return to the surface. Despite these formidable dangers, the work of exploration persists relentlessly because every few years a new passageway is uncovered. A deeper chamber is carefully surveyed, ancient bones are recovered for study, fragments of pottery are dated, and the complex map of this hidden underworld gradually, painstakingly expands. Dedicated diving teams, such as those involved with the Gran Acufiro Maya project, have been meticulously charting these immense systems, proving connections between cenotes across vast geographical distances. Their work has revealed an interconnected web of subterranean rivers and sinkholes that spans nearly the entirety of the Yucatan region. The sheer scale of this hidden watershed is almost beyond human belief, a complete, drowned landscape lying in secret beneath the jungle, a landscape that has fundamentally shaped the culture, ecology, and foundational mythology of the Yucatan for thousands upon thousands of years. Astonishingly, some of these flooded tunnels are so ancient that they were completely dry during the last ice age. In those long-ago eras of aridity, animals and even early human inhabitants used these caverns as shelters. Fossils of species long extinct such as giant ground sloths and saber-toothed cats have been discovered in chambers that are now permanently filled with water. Human remains have been found there as well. Skulls and bones dating back more than 10,000 years have been preserved in pristine condition by the still, mineral-rich water. These are not merely caves, they are perfect time capsules, preserving a detailed record of a world that existed long before the surface above resembled anything we recognize today. In recent years, cutting-edge LIDAR and sophisticated underwater mapping technologies have begun to unveil the full, staggering extent of these submerged networks, yet a significant portion remains a mystery. Some of the deepest cenotes are simply too hazardous for comprehensive exploration. Others are too remote, concealed within dense, impenetrable forest, or located on privately owned land. And some, it seems, are still waiting for their initial discovery. Local residents will share stories of mysterious pools that materialize only after periods of heavy rain, vanishing once more as the land dries. They speak of sudden sinkholes in the jungle where the water is so profoundly black it refuses to reflect the sky, and of certain caves that seem to breathe, exhaling streams of cool air on the hottest of days. What ultimately draws explorers to these places is not solely the allure of mystery. It is the overwhelming silence, the sheer depth, the profound sensation of being in a location so utterly pristine, so completely detached from the surface world, that the very passage of time seems to decelerate and stretch. Beneath the jungle and the limestone, within the deep blue stillness of the Yucatán cenotes, it becomes effortless to forget that the bustling world above exists at all. These places are as dangerously lethal as they are breathtakingly beautiful, yet they are also heartbreakingly fragile. The more they are explored, the more we learn not only about the Maya, the Ice Age, or geology, but about how easily true wonder can be damaged and lost forever. Certain cenotes have already suffered from pollution or excessive visitor traffic. Others have partially collapsed due to vibrations from nearby construction projects. Therefore, preservation has become an essential chapter in this ongoing story, a dedicated global effort to safeguard these natural wonders before they are altered for all time. For now, however, they remain quiet, profound, and hovering just at the very edge of human reach. The deepest cenotes of the Yucatan are far more than simple holes in the ground. They are the living threshold between light and darkness, between the known and the unknowable. And they serve as a powerful reminder that sometimes the most universe-altering discoveries are not waiting for us up in the distant stars, but are lying directly below our feet, hidden and patient in the dark water. This precise location is called Point Nemo, known to oceanographers as the oceanic pole of inaccessibility. It is a specific area of open sea positioned so incredibly distant from any continent or island that it creates the sensation of being the planet's abandoned core. It is truly a non-place set within an immense expanse of nothingness. You will find no physical marker designating Point Nemo. There exists no emergent landmass, no constructed object, no distinguishing feature visible to the human eye. Its entire identity rests upon a set of geographical numbers approximately 48 degrees and 52.6 minutes south latitude and 123 degrees and 23.6 minutes west longitude. It resides within the vast, open waters of the southern Pacific Ocean, mathematically positioned at an equal distance from the shores of three extraordinarily remote landforms. These are Ducie Island, a component of the Pitcairn Archipelago, the tiny islet of Motu Nui situated close to the famed Easter Island, and the ice-bound coast of Marie Byrd Land in Antarctica. From the nearest point of any one of these three isolated places, the journey to Point Nemo exceeds 1,400 nautical miles across open ocean. A vessel could drift for countless days in that direction, and the view would remain constant and featureless. Nothing but the endless meeting line of water and sky beneath the vast, domed ceiling of the heavens. Its evocative name is borrowed from the fictional character Captain Nemo, the enigmatic undersea adventurer created by author Jules Verne. The designation is profoundly fitting. Point Nemo exists simultaneously as a subject of human fantasy and a matter of scientific fact, representing both ultimate isolation and profound quiet. It was formally calculated and given this title in the year 1992 by a survey engineer of Croatian and Canadian heritage named Hrvoje Lukatela. He employed advanced geospatial computer modeling to pinpoint with certainty the single location in all the world's oceans that is farthest away from any dry land. Since that moment of official recognition, it has evolved into a powerful symbol for absolute solitude, for extreme remoteness, and for the sobering reality of how much of our world remains expansively empty and devoid of human presence. Yet Point Nemo is not merely a set of coordinates on a nautical chart. It embodies a powerful concept. It is the definitive proof that a specific spot on our globe exists at such an immense remove from human society that to be stationed there, whether standing or floating, means you are farther from another living person than at perhaps any other conceivable location on the planet's surface. You would observe no aircraft crossing the sky above. You would see no ship's silhouette on any horizon. You would hear no crackle of radio communication, no distant hum of machinery, no glimpse of artificial illumination in any direction. There is only the profound depth of the sea, the mysterious pull of its currents, and the slow, cold movements of deep ocean creatures. The sea at Point Nemo lies approximately 13,000 feet below the surface. In that permanent darkness, biological life exists and operates in manners which human science has only begun to comprehend. Very few marine research expeditions have deliberately focused their studies on this particular zone. There has historically been little practical incentive to make the arduous journey. It is positioned far removed from all major commercial shipping routes, distant from productive fishing grounds, and logistically challenging to access. However, this very lack of practical purpose is integral to its compelling nature. Unlike other famously remote locations defined by imposing physical barriers such as towering mountain ranges, blistering deserts, or frozen ice caps, the inaccessibility of Point Nemo is defined purely by absence. It is not obstructed by any formidable obstacle. It is simply overwhelmingly far away. For many years, the extreme isolation of Point Nemo has made it the perfect selected site for a surprisingly contemporary function. The designated crash zone for decommissioned orbital spacecraft, it has earned the informal nickname, the Spacecraft Cemetery. When aging satellites, expendable modules, or entire space stations are retired from service and guided in a controlled manner down from their orbits, Point Nemo is frequently chosen as the target for their final descent. In the period between 1971 and the year 2016, more than 260 individual spacecraft or major components were deliberately deposited into this region of the ocean. This notable collection includes sections of Russia's deorbited Mir space station and pieces from the retired Chinese Tiangong-1 space laboratory. It stands as one of the exceedingly rare places on Earth where engineers can direct a large object falling from orbit with high confidence that it will not strike any person or any significant structure. There is a peculiar irony in this reality. The single most remote location on our planet has simultaneously become the final resting place for the physical remnants of humanity's ambition to travel into space. It is a graveyard not for biological remains, but for scorched metal and shattered engineering. Scattered silently across the dark sea floor in that region is a submerged museum, a collection of artifacts representing our collective ventures beyond the atmospheric shell of our world. This fact only deepens the enigmatic aura of the place. It is not haunted in any supernatural sense, but it feels haunted by the immense reach of human aspiration and by the quiet, practical limits we are forced to recognize. because of its unparalleled remoteness from any land-based noise pollution. Point Nemo also ranks among the most acoustically silent environments in the entire global ocean. This unique quality makes it an ideal location for deploying sensitive underwater listening equipment designed to monitor marine sounds. And in 1997, hydrophone arrays detected something highly unusual in the vicinity of Point Nemo. Recorded simply as the bloop, this ultra-low-frequency acoustic signal was registered by sensors operated by the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The sound was astonishingly powerful, sufficiently intense to be detected by multiple sensors positioned over 3,000 miles apart. For many years afterward, widespread speculation flourished regarding its origin. Could it have been an unknown species of gigantic whale? Was it perhaps a secret military submarine? Or might it have been something else entirely, something unknown? Eventually, after extensive analysis, scientific consensus concluded the sound was most likely generated by a massive ice quake, a natural phenomenon caused by the tremendous fracturing and calving of an immense Antarctic iceberg. Yet the fact that this mysterious, powerful noise was recorded so near to Point Nemo and that it remained unidentifiable for such a long period served only to intensify the sense of eerie potential surrounding this place. Even today, the idea persists that if you were to float upon the waves in that specific part of the Pacific, you would be adrift above something profoundly deep and fundamentally unknowable. And yet, despite all these layers of mystery and functional use, Point Nemo does not inherently project a feeling of menace or threat. Instead, the overwhelming sensation it evokes is one of immense quiet, of profound softness, a kind of peaceful emptiness where the sea and the sky merge seamlessly into a single entity, and the very passage of time seems to slow to a crawl. It is not a destination for travelers in any conventional sense. Certainly, one could hire a specialized vessel to journey there, and a handful of dedicated adventurers and research scientists have done exactly that. However, upon arrival, there is literally nothing to see. There is no commemorative flag planted in the waves, no navigational buoy, no stone marker. There are only the numbers on a GPS screen and the intimate, humbling knowledge that you are presently farther from solid land than it is geographically possible to be anywhere else on Earth. This is perhaps the quality that renders it most unsettling. The majority of remote places possess some defining physical characteristics: a soaring peak, a dramatic cliff face, an ancient ruin. Point Nemo possesses only water and emptiness. It is akin to existing within the negative space on the canvas of our planet, a hollow pocket where even the winds appear to lose their direction and purpose. Within the realms of literature and human imagination, such blank spaces on the map are incredibly fertile ground. Tales of vanished advanced civilizations, of mythical sunken cities like Atlantis, and of legendary deep-sea monsters all naturally gravitate toward the narrative potential of a place like Point Nemo. While there exists absolutely no scientific evidence to suggest anything unnatural or anomalous is present there, the potent combination of extreme isolation, unimaginable ocean depth, and its history as a dumping ground for unmonitored space debris makes it very easy to understand why it inspires both intense curiosity and a deep-seated unease in equal measure. For the scientific community, Point Nemo serves as a constant, humbling reminder of how much we have yet to learn about the deep ocean ecosystems and geology. For writers and creators of fiction, it presents the perfect blank canvas upon which to project stories. For the general public, it simply confirms that our Earth still possesses silent, untouched corners, places entirely unaffected by global tourism or economic development, places where true, absolute silence continues to reign supreme. This reality also prompts serious philosophical questions. In an era where our planet grows ever more interconnected, where satellite networks can observe every square mile and global travel becomes progressively faster and more efficient, how many genuine frontiers truly remain? Point Nemo is not remote because it is legally protected, considered sacred, or inherently dangerous. It is remote because it is fundamentally unnecessary. No human activity requires a presence there. Nothing of immediate economic or strategic value demands our attention. This quality of pure, unclaimed emptiness is what makes it exceptionally rare in the modern age. The oceanic waters surrounding it are nutritionally rich in phytoplankton and microscopic microbial life, yet they exhibit relatively low biodiversity compared to vibrant coastal zones or coral reefs. Large marine mammals like whales likely transit through the area on migratory routes but do not linger or reside there. The region lacks the complex structures of coral reefs, the diverse ecosystems of islands, or any measurable direct human impact. It represents the ocean in its most minimal, most elemental form, simply water and immense depth. Nevertheless, like all places on Earth, it will not remain permanently beyond the reach of human inquiry. As technologies for deep-sea exploration continue to advance and new methods for sampling these extreme environments become more affordable and capable, Point Nemo will almost certainly become a subject of greater scientific scrutiny. Some researchers and visionaries have even proposed plans for constructing permanent underwater observatories on the seabed there, hoping to leverage the unparalleled acoustic quiet for sensitive experiments. Others advocate for a policy of deliberate preservation, wishing to maintain it as a pristine natural control site, a silent baseline in a world that grows audibly and environmentally noisier by the year. But for the present moment, it endures as it always has been, the middle of nowhere, a theoretical dot in the immense blue expanse of the South Pacific that powerfully symbolizes just how vast, strange, and still uncharted our planet remains. And whether you are a seasoned sailor, a devoted scientist, or merely an individual with a curious mind, its existence serves as a potent reminder that the Earth still holds places that remain profoundly indifferent to our visits, our studies, or even our awareness of their existence. Not all places that are forbidden are enclosed by barriers or protected by legal decree. Some are simply impossible to reach. This is not because they are concealed by official secrecy or interred below the ground, but because the natural world itself declares they are off limits. Our journey now carries us to a great altitude, into the razor-sharp and oxygened, thin atmosphere of northern Pakistan. Here, within the formidable Karakoram Range, a severe and frozen expanse of mountains where several of the planet's highest summits pierce the cloud layer, there exists one peak upon which no human foot has ever stood. This is not for a lack of effort, but because every attempt has ended in failure. This mountain is Machu Picchu, and it stands as one of the final great unclimbed giants on Earth. Reaching an approximate height of 7,453 meters, or nearly 24,500 feet, Machu Picchu is not the tallest mountain in the world, nor even the tallest within the Karakoram. Yet it possesses a unique and compelling status. It is currently the highest documented peak that remains technically unascended and, significantly, is still legally permissible to climb. This latter point is crucial. Numerous unclimbed summits stay untouched due to governmental prohibitions, sacred religious ordinances, or the protective beliefs of indigenous peoples. Machu Picchu, however, is open to mountaineers. It simply will not allow anyone to succeed. Situated deep within the Batura Mustang sub-range, Machu Picchu is cradled amongst a host of immense ridges and glacial valleys. The landscape surrounding it is among the most severe on the planet. It is profoundly isolated, relentlessly scarred by weather, and dangerously unstable. You will find no approaching roads, no comfortable base camps, No thriving mountaineering settlements like those that service Everest or K2. There is only stone ice and immense silence. It was only within the last few decades that Machu Picchu started to garner serious consideration from the climbing world. Although it had been featured on maps for many years, its exact elevation was not precisely determined until fairly recent times. Initially, it was believed to be lower, potentially disqualifying it from the notable distinction it now claims. However, modern satellite information and revised topographic surveys confirmed its true stature, and in doing so, secured its position as the highest unclimbed and legally accessible peak on the globe. Yet, obtaining official permission does not equate to gaining physical access. The first genuine attempt to scale Machu Picchu occurred in 2003 by a team of climbers from Spain, who aimed to achieve a first ascent via the mountain's daunting southwestern face. They confronted the same formidable obstacles that every subsequent expedition has faced: precipitous rock walls, unstable ice formations, and savagely erratic weather systems. They were compelled to retreat. Other teams followed in the years after, each testing different routes, alternative approaches, and varied strategies. All were ultimately forced to abandon their quests. Some retreated due to injuries, others were defeated by the terrain itself. The summit remained inviolate. What renders Machu Picchu so exceptionally difficult is not merely its formidable height. It is the specific manner of its formation. The mountain presents a layered series of expert-level climbing hazards. It is defended by treacherous seracs, hidden crevices, overhanging cornices, and nearly vertical rock faces that provide almost no opportunity for secure respite. In stark contrast to Everest or Denali, which possess well-documented paths and decades of established climbing support, Machu Picchu is utterly untamed. No fixed ropes have been left in place from prior attempts. No reliable route has been confirmed. Every new expedition must begin its planning from absolute zero. There are no local Sherpa guides familiar with the way. No rescue helicopters stand ready nearby. If a serious problem occurs on Machu Picchu, there exists no rapid means of extraction. Furthermore, the volatile weather patterns of the Karakoram are capable of transforming within mere minutes, often trapping climbers in sudden storms that envelop the mountain in blinding snow and hurricane. Force winds so swiftly that even a well-established camp can be completely buried before dawn. And yet, mountaineers persist in trying. In 2020, a small British team captured global attention by arriving tantalizingly close to the summit. They ascended higher than any group before them, establishing high-altitude camps above 6,000 meters and mounting a courageous final push toward the top. But with deteriorating atmospheric conditions and clear evidence of hazardous instability within the snowpack, they faced the agonizing choice to turn back. As with every prior endeavor, the highest point remained untouched. The mystery of Machu Picchu is not one of myth or magic. It is purely geographical. Yet there is a powerful quality to this fact that makes the mountain even more captivating. In a modern era when virtually every corner of the earth has been ascended, charted, or recorded, here stands a peak that defies conquest, not because of folklore, but because of the raw power of nature. Its inaccessibility is legitimately earned, not artificially constructed. There is also a form of quiet dignity in how this mountain occupies its place on the map. Unlike Everest or K2, whose identities are recognized across the world, Machu Picchu remains obscure even to many experienced alpinists. It does not promote itself. It does not feature in common travel literature. You will not find commemorative trinkets bearing its name. And yet, for those who understand where to direct their gaze, it symbolizes something exceedingly rare: a final geographical frontier, a specific location that has not yet been claimed or overcome. The territory encircling the mountain is similarly barren and breathtaking. The Batura Valley that leads toward its foundation is one of the most isolated areas in all of Pakistan. It is home to small, resilient communities that maintain traditional lifestyles, practicing agriculture and herding in one of the most extreme climates on the planet. The local inhabitants know these mountains by ancient names passed down through oral history. They observe the climbers arrive and depart, and they witness the mountain itself remain precisely as it has always existed, silent, frigid, and utterly unchanged. And so Machu Picchu endures as it has for millennia. It is not famous. It is not officially forbidden. It is simply, resolutely unreachable. In many important ways, it serves as a potent reminder of something we easily forget in our thoroughly cataloged and quantified world, that certain places still possess the capacity to refuse us, that not every boundary line has been crossed, not every highest point attained, and that perhaps within these pristine, untouched spaces, there resides something valuable to safeguard, not as a future athletic challenge, but as a permanent mystery, a silent sentinel standing at the very edge of human knowledge and capability. As is true for all the locations we investigate, this narrative is not founded upon legend or hyperbole. It is rooted in tangible reality. It is the story of the sheer, immovable physical presence of a mountain that has, until now, absolutely refused to allow any person to stand upon its pinnacle. It may one day in the future be successfully climbed, but for the present moment, Machu Picchu remains exactly what it has always been, untouched, isolated. From an urban relic frozen in time, we now journey to a desert so immense and vacant that its profound silence feels like the only entity that has ever truly inhabited it. Our next destination is not concealed behind fortifications or beneath the sea. It is hidden in full view, sprawling across countless kilometers under a sky so overwhelmingly huge it appears to press the terrain completely flat beneath its dome. This is the Woomera Prohibited Area, a location so enormous and so strictly forbidden that it is frequently described as the most extensive terrestrial weapons testing range on the planet. Yet for many people living outside Australia, it scarcely exists in their awareness, a circumstance that aligns perfectly with its original design. The Woomera Prohibited Area, often abbreviated as the WPA, is situated in the state of South Australia, and its scale is staggering, encompassing over 120,000 square kilometers. It covers a greater landmass than numerous independent nations. This is approximately the total area of England. In distinct contrast to many of the world's other restricted zones, Woomera is not delineated by perimeter fences or watchtowers. It is defined by sheer empty space. Limitless, open, sun-bleached space. The kind of place where silence manifests as a tangible pressure and the distant horizon never seems to grow any nearer. Founded in the year 1947 as a collaborative endeavor between the governments of the United Kingdom and Australia, Woomera was conceived during the initial, tense chapters of the Cold War, a period when long-range armaments and guided missile trials were swiftly ascending as a supreme priority for Western defense initiatives. Its geographical position was perfectly suited, profoundly remote, minimally inhabited, and situated within a politically secure nation. From its very inception, it was engineered for absolute secrecy. Experimental weapons could be fired, monitored, and retrieved with the least possible chance of observation by unauthorized parties or of unintentional public exposure. The terrain was cleared, the airspace above was closed, and this portion of the desert was claimed not by agricultural pioneers, but by the dual forces of scientific inquiry and military aspiration. For many decades, Woomera ranked among the most clandestine locations on Earth. Missile systems, satellite deployment programs, and prototype aircraft were all evaluated within its bounds. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, the zone fulfilled a critical function in the weapons development efforts of both Britain and Australia. Rocket motors were ignited. Ballistic flight paths were charted. Entire research initiatives commenced and concluded, leaving behind little evidence beyond concrete launch platforms, corroding gantries, and derelict hangars gradually being reclaimed by the pervasive red sand. Furthermore, Woomera was not solely a testing facility. It was also a settlement, a closed community. The township of Woomera Village was constructed to accommodate defense personnel and their relatives. For a long time, it operated as a fully self-sufficient community. However, you could not simply choose to relocate there. You required security clearance, an official assignment, and formal transportation into the area. Individuals from outside the program seldom had any cause to visit, and even fewer received authorization to venture past the village limits. The desert wilderness beyond was under stringent regulation. Its internal maps were segmented into ambiguous sectors labeled as red zones, amber zones, and green zones. The ability to enter any given sector depended entirely on what specific tests were being conducted and which personnel were permitted to witness them. To the present day, a significant portion of the activities conducted at Woomera remain officially classified. Although it no longer operates under the same intense degree of global surveillance it once endured, the territory continues to be utilized for defense and aerospace experimentation. The Australian Defence Force maintains administrative and security control, and while certain sections are occasionally made available for highly regulated civilian purposes, the overwhelming majority of the land persists under strict prohibition. In more recent years, Woomera has experienced a resurgence of attention as a prospective location for commercial rocket launches and trials for self-driving vehicle systems. Once again, however, specific information is scarce, and official announcements often provide minimal detail. Satellite photographs reveal a combination of derelict structures and scattered, active installations, hangars, radar domes, telemetry stations. Yet much of what truly exists within Woomera is simply not known. This ignorance extends not just to the general populace, but occasionally even to other branches of government outside the direct defense hierarchy. This is not about concealing fantastical creatures or elaborate conspiracies. It is about the principle of compartmentalization. A place engineered to safeguard secrets rarely divulges them, even within its own organizational boundaries. The natural environment itself intensifies the aura of secrecy. The Australian outback is already counted among the most isolated landscapes on the planet. Within the confines of the Woomera zone, that sense of isolation becomes absolute. Gravel roads seem to dissolve into emptiness. Antiquated test sites disappear beneath accumulations of wind-blown sand and hardy scrub vegetation. There are impact craters from missiles, wreckage from unmanned aerial vehicles, and remains of experimental craft that are seldom discussed openly. And somewhere within that vastness, extended test tracks run straight for hundreds of kilometers, their ultimate endpoints lost behind a perpetual, shimmering heat mirage. For a casual traveler driving through South Australia, Woomera might appear as nothing more than another expanse of arid wilderness, a mere label on a road map. But for those who are aware of or recall its operational history, it commands a form of austere respect. This was the frontier of technological advancement, the validation site for creations never intended for public view. While the village of Woomera itself is no longer classified and even hosts a modest historical museum, the enormous tract of land surrounding it remains under tight control. Entry is prohibited without specific authorization. Photography is heavily constrained, and stern warning signs are still posted along barren access tracks. Unauthorized entry prohibited. Lev firing range. Danger. Unlike numerous other inaccessible locations, Woomera does not evoke a sense of ancient, mythological mystery. There are no traditional legends or folklore narratives handed down through centuries. Its secrets are contemporary, recent, factual, and continuously evolving. It is not the unknown aspects of Woomera that are disquieting. It is the confirmed knowledge that it remains active, still pertinent, and so impossibly vast that entire development programs could disappear inside its borders without leaving any observable evidence. There exists, too, a peculiar contrast between permanence and oblivion. On one side, there are decaying barracks, obsolete communications towers, and rusted machinery slowly subsiding into the soil. On the other side, there are accounts of advanced technological complexes, fields designated for drone trials, and sophisticated tracking apparatus employed for classified spaceflight endeavors. Woomera is simultaneously ancient and modern, a Cold War artifact that has resisted becoming outdated. There is an additional, profound dimension to this narrative. Woomera occupies the ancestral territories of several indigenous Australian communities, including the Kokatha people. A great deal of the testing and construction undertaken there proceeded without proper consultation or agreement. Sites of deep cultural significance were disrupted. Traditional access was blocked. In more recent times, attempts have been initiated to acknowledge this difficult history and to incorporate indigenous perspectives into the land management process. Nevertheless, the overall legacy is intricate and fraught. For many, Woomera symbolizes not only state secrecy but also cultural displacement and loss. Somehow, despite all these layers of history and control, the area has stayed largely invisible to the wider world. It is too expansive to encircle with fencing, too isolated to encounter by accident, and too rigorously administered to permit independent scrutiny. It is not a destination for tourists, nor a celebrated landmark. It simply persists quiet, scorching, and still very much operational. Very few places like it endure today. In an era where satellite observation is ubiquitous, where digital maps refresh constantly, and where information seems merely a few keystrokes away, Woomera persists as a genuine blank space, a real one. This is not because it is inherently unknowable, but because it was fundamentally constructed to be overlooked. As the wind travels across the saltbush plains and the red dust rises in long, spiraling columns, Woomera continues silent, sprawling, and obstinately real. You can drive along its perimeter, you can fly across its airspace, you can research its documented past, but you will never truly penetrate its core. Not in any meaningful sense. Now let us continue onward. From the sun-scorched immensity of Australia's concealed frontier, we voyage even farther into a realm where no roads exist, no fences stand, and no solid ground can be found at all. There is only the ocean and a peculiar, unsettling sensation of being more distant from humankind than anywhere else on the globe, a place where the closest people are frequently circling overhead within the International Space Station rather than sailing upon the waters below. Let us depart from the sea. The deep hush of open ocean now is way to another form of quiet, more profound and disconcertingly familiar. This time, our destination is not remote, but situated directly under the feet of a living metropolis. Concealed beneath sidewalk cafes and ancient cobblestones, under one of the globe's most bustling urban centers, rests a dark reflection of Paris. It is an immense subterranean complex of passages and quarried stone. This space is filled not with forgotten machinery or geological formations, but with the skeletal remains of human beings, assembled into patterns that are both unsettling and meticulously intentional. This is the Paris catacombs. Upon first consideration, it might seem like a setting from a dark novel, but the catacombs are entirely real and deeply historical. They were not originally constructed as sepulchres. In truth, their genesis was as limestone quarries dug out over 6 centuries ago, long before Paris adopted its current iconic silhouette. The soft, workable rock beneath the growing city was extracted to supply the very building blocks of the capital. This stone helped erect its grand cathedrals, its civic monuments, and its stately residences. As the centuries passed and demand for building material increased, the underground lattice of quarries grew ever more extensive. Tunnels, vertical shafts, and hollowed chambers spread like a stone circulatory system beneath the streets. By the 1700s, however, these excavations began to pose a serious threat. Many tunnels had been abandoned, some even lost to municipal memory. Structures on the surface started to subside and, in several alarming instances, collapsed completely into the unstable voids below. City authorities initiated efforts to survey the tunnels, striving to comprehend and secure the labyrinth beneath their foundations. During this same era, Paris confronted a separate grisly crisis. The city's cemeteries were catastrophically overflowing. The population was expanding rapidly, and with it, the number of the deceased. The most infamous graveyard, Les Innocents, had been in continuous use for over 600 years and was perilously over capacity. Burials were shallow, public health conditions were appalling, and local residents protested relentlessly about the foul odor, the risk of disease, and the macabre sight of bones emerging from the sodden ground after heavy rain. In the year 1780, a retaining wall of the cemetery collapsed under the immense, sodden pressure of centuries of accumulated decay, unleashing a wave of human remains into the adjacent neighborhood. The solution devised was grim yet pragmatic: empty the overfilled cemeteries and relocate their contents underground. The abandoned limestone quarries presented an ideal repository. Beginning in the late 1780s and continuing for many decades, horse-drawn carts draped in black cloth moved through the sleeping city after dark, transporting exhumed bones from the crowded churchyards to their new, final residence below the boulevards. This was not a careless disposal operation. The bones were arranged with a chilling, reverential order. Skulls were stacked into tidy rows. Femurs were aligned like bricks in a wall. Entire partitions and pillars were constructed from the anonymous dead. Certain areas even feature stone plaques, carved inscriptions, or symbolic motifs. This was more than mere storage. It was a form of subterranean architecture, a deliberate design created from human remains. Contemporary estimates suggest the remains of more than 6 million individuals now reside within the catacombs. Walking through the small section open to the public is an experience of crossing into a separate reality. The air is perpetually cool and damp, the ceilings oppressively low. The sound of footsteps creates odd, lingering echoes in the tight, winding corridors. At the entrance to the ossuary, the technical term for a repository of bones, visitors pass beneath a carved inscription in the stone archway. Varti! Siest ici l'Empire de la Mort. Stop! This is the Empire of the Dead. The individuals here are anonymous. Their bones were transferred without their names, stripped of all personal identity. Yet collectively, they constitute a vast, silent populace dwelling beneath the vibrant city of the living. The sensation is not one of active menace, but of a profound, enduring stillness, a palpable reminder of the multitudes who lived before and of how intimately the past lies buried just below our daily tread. Only a tiny fraction of the catacombs is legally accessible to visitors, a route measuring just over 1 mile in length. However, the complete network is vastly more extensive, weaving for more than 200 miles under Paris, much of it officially uncharted or sealed by government order. Some zones are structurally unsound and perilous. Others are blocked to prevent damage or theft. This has not, however, deterred a subculture of clandestine explorers known as cataphiles. These urban adventurers enter through concealed openings, forgotten cellar hatches, storm drain grates, disused stairwells, or maintenance conduits. They carry detailed maps, powerful lights, and a code of deep respect for the environment. Some create elaborate murals on the limestone walls. Others organize secret musical performances or gatherings. Many simply wander and contemplate. It is an entire hidden society operating in the city's underbelly. Specific sections have earned nicknames from these explorers: the beach, the chapel, the crypt of the lovers. In the deeper, forbidden tunnels, strange artifacts occasionally appear: armchairs, sculptures, even makeshift libraries. In 2004, police conducting a routine inspection made a startling discovery deep in a restricted area: a fully functional cinema, complete with a large screen, a film projector, and seating for dozens. Adjacent to it was a meticulously stocked bar and dining area. When officers returned a few days later for a fuller investigation, the entire complex had been dismantled and removed without a trace. A single note was left behind: "Do not try to find us, Dao." Despite this aura of romantic rebellion, the catacombs are not without genuine peril. The tunnels are pitch black and geometrically confusing. The risk of becoming hopelessly lost is acute, especially in the sealed sections far from any official path. In 2017, 2 teenagers were rescued by emergency services after spending 3 terrifying days lost in the maze, eventually found severely dehydrated but alive. Others throughout history have not been as fortunate. What is most extraordinary about the Paris catacombs is not merely their existence, but their peculiar public nature. Unlike secret military bunkers or distant, uninhabited islands, this is a place known to millions. Yet, it stubbornly retains its core mystery. Even after 2 centuries of public access and countless stories, it retains a quality of the surreal. It is a labyrinth crafted from history itself, a museum that largely forgoes explanatory plaques, a graveyard where no individual names are recorded. The true danger here is not primarily physical access, it is psychological, existential. These tunnels force a direct confrontation with human mortality. They present a vista of thousands upon thousands of silent witnesses, a stark reminder that the vibrant life above is fleeting and temporary. The intention is not to frighten, but to instill a profound and necessary humility. This place is not remote in a geographical sense, but in terms of accessibility. In the very center of Pyongyang, concealed within a nondescript administrative structure, there is an office that practically no citizen of North Korea has ever laid eyes upon. Furthermore, most individuals from beyond the nation's borders are not even meant to be aware of its existence. It is not an archaeological ruin or a lost city. It is something far more contemporary and, in numerous respects, far more disquieting. It is called Office 39, or at least that is the designation used by external observers who have attempted to investigate it. Its official title may be something different entirely. Its existence has never been formally acknowledged by the government of North Korea. Any sign identifying it, if one exists, is not displayed publicly. However, international analysts and specialists concur. Office 39 is real, and its influence permeates deeply through one of the world's most opaque and tightly controlled nations. First identified in reports from the late 1970s, Office 39 is widely believed to be a specialized bureau operating within the ruling Workers' Party of Korea. Its fundamental objective is to generate foreign currency for the state, not through conventional means like taxation, legal exports, or tourism, but via methods that span from state-operated business enterprises to activities that are far less legal and often exist in a moral gray zone. This portfolio is said to include international gold trading, covert arms transactions, and the manufacturing of counterfeit goods. According to testimony from defectors and various intelligence sources, it has also been connected to North Korea's participation in international narcotics trafficking, sophisticated cyber criminal operations, and illicit commercial networks that function behind intricate layers of fictitious corporate entities and obscure financial channels. Yet beyond this broad understanding, concrete information is exceptionally scarce. There are no publicly available documents, no verified photographs from its interior, no confirmed roster of personnel. Only fragments of data, intelligence leaks, persistent rumors, and analytic reports, primarily sourced from defectors or foreign spy agencies, painstakingly assembled like clues from a crime scene where the door remains permanently locked. The name Office 39 most likely originates from the specific room number it once occupied within the central headquarters of the ruling party. It is thought to have since relocated its operations to an entirely separate building, possibly within the government complex surrounding Kim Il-sung Square. Nevertheless, the original numerical identifier endured, and today it functions as a convenient label for a much larger and more nebulous entity, the entire concealed financial apparatus that helps sustain the political power of North Korea's supreme leadership. Some experts posit that Office 39 manages a web of more than 100 separate companies and associated organizations. A significant number of these are based outside North Korea's borders, utilizing fabricated identities or corporate shells to obscure their ownership. These operations are believed to be active across Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and parts of Africa. On the surface, these businesses can appear perfectly legitimate hotels, restaurants, mining consortiums, or commercial fishing ventures. However, behind the formal paperwork, the generated profits are systematically diverted back to Pyongyang, bankrolling the country's ruling elite and financing state programs that are otherwise crippled by international sanctions and global isolation. Reportedly, absolute loyalty to the ruling Kim dynasty forms the unshakable core of its entire operation. Office 39 is not an autonomous entity. It is understood to answer directly to the nation's supreme leadership. Some political and financial analysts have even characterized it as a personal, discretionary fund for Kim Jong-un. The revenue it accumulates does not flow into public works projects, agricultural development, or domestic food distribution programs. Instead, it is directed toward advanced weapons research and development, the procurement of luxury commodities, and any other expenditure the regime considers vital for its continued existence and control. This profound secrecy is entirely intentional. The individuals who work within Office 39 are likely counted among the most vetted and trusted in the entire nation. They are not merely clerks or accountants, but highly trained operatives with expertise in international finance, global trade regulations, maritime shipping logistics, and digital network security. They conduct their business behind closed, secure doors, often under assumed identities, and they leverage diplomatic immunity and protections whenever it is feasible. Should an operation fail, if a front company is discovered and shut down by foreign authorities, these individuals and their activities simply disappear from any observable record. Occasionally, small cracks appear in this facade of secrecy. In 2005, the United States Treasury Department imposed sanctions on a bank based in Macau named Banco Delta Asia, formally accusing it of laundering money for North Korean financial interests. That banking institution was explicitly linked by name to the activities of Office 39. In subsequent years, other operations came to light. North Korean laborers were discovered working in overseas restaurants or factories, their wages being confiscated and sent back to the state. Cargo ships were intercepted carrying counterfeit pharmaceuticals, luxury watches, and even falsified currency, all traceable to North Korean state-owned enterprises. More recently, sophisticated cyber assaults attributed to North Korean hacking groups have targeted central banks, cryptocurrency trading platforms, and financial institutions across multiple countries. Each of these incidents points back toward the same underlying financial system, one that functions in the shadows, transcends national borders and leaves minimal evidence of its activities. And consistently placed at the conceptual center of that system is Office 39. Yet the most deeply unsettling aspect of Office 39 is not merely the scale of the money it handles. It is the essential role it performs within North Korea's rigid power structure. In a country where the overwhelming majority of the population contends with chronic food shortages and severely limited access to basic utilities like electricity, Office 39 ensures the ruling inner circle remains completely insulated from these hardships. It pays for the upkeep of palatial residences, the importation of luxury automobiles, and the expensive foreign educations for the children of the elite. It constructs and maintains the parallel world inhabited by the regime, a world entirely separate from the stark reality experienced by the ordinary citizenry. Furthermore, because its mechanisms are so deeply hidden, this financial network also proves highly resistant to external political and economic pressure. International sanctions may severely impact legitimate exports and traditional banking relationships, but the network operated by Office 39 is fluid and adaptable. It does not depend on conventional commerce. It trades in physical gold bullion, rare earth minerals, encrypted digital transfers, and difficult-to-trace cryptocurrencies. It has been analogized to a sovereign state operating within another state, an entity that does not promulgate laws but instead controls the critical financial pipelines that support the throne. The eeriest fact is that despite our modern era of global surveillance and interconnected intelligence, Office 39 continues to function. It has persisted through multiple changes in international leadership, endured decades of escalating sanctions, and evaded countless external investigations. It exists within one of the most rigidly controlled societies on the planet, where internal dissent is ruthlessly suppressed and operational secrecy is treated as a paramount national virtue, and within that environment, it not only survives but thrives. It is entirely possible that the organizational structure of Office 39 has evolved over the years. It may have been divided into multiple sub-departments, rebranded under different internal names, or physically moved to new, more secure locations. However, its core function remains constant: to generate capital for the regime by any and all means necessary. What renders it uniquely disquieting is its quality of being invisible in plain sight. One could walk directly past the building that houses it and never have an inkling. One could converse with a person employed by it and never suspect their true role. Its actions create ripples across global black markets, within encrypted digital wallets, and in high-stakes clandestine deals, yet it leaves behind no definitive signature. Defectors who have chosen to speak about Office 39 do so with measured caution. Some assert it wields greater real power than many of the official government ministries. Others refuse to discuss it altogether out of fear or residual loyalty. And for a vast number of ordinary North Korean citizens, it is not even a known concept. It does not appear in state-produced textbooks or propaganda materials. It is not a part of communal life or public discourse. It simply exists, operating like a hidden engine beneath the surface of the state, perpetually active. In recent years, as global cyber capabilities have advanced, Office 39 or the entities connected to it are assessed to have shifted a significant portion of their revenue, generating operations into the digital realm. The infamous WannaCry ransomware attack of 2017 was publicly attributed by several governments to North Korean hackers. Large-scale thefts of cryptocurrency, elaborate phishing schemes, and sophisticated online banking fraud have all been forensically traced back to Internet Protocol addresses and computer servers linked to North Korea. These modern methods are more challenging to intercept, more difficult to track to their source, and have proven to be increasingly lucrative. Yet even this digital evolution does not wholly replace the older, established methods. Counterfeit goods, illegal conventional trade, and front businesses continue to play a substantial role. The overall network is multi-layered, globally dispersed, and highly adaptable, frequently remaining one step ahead of international law enforcement and, in other instances, shielded by diplomatic barriers. So, what does one actually find inside Office 39? The truthful answer is that we do not know. There are no authenticated images, no photographs provided by a whistleblower from within, merely a name, an enduring reputation, and an accumulating collection of indirect and circumstantial evidence. Its continued existence serves as a potent reminder that not all of the world's profound mysteries are ancient or buried beneath desert sands. Some are actively unfolding in real time, behind reinforced doors in cities most of us will never be permitted to visit. And that is precisely what makes Office 39 so compelling. It is not a historical ruin. It is not a mythological tale. It is something tangible, current, and operational. It is merely hidden from direct view. It is the unseen financial machine that helps fund a nation-state, invisible yet undeniably present, quiet yet immense in its consequences. In a world where most secrets are eventually revealed, Office 39 endures. It does not speak. It does not announce itself. It moves with deliberate quiet in the perpetual dark. And for the present moment, that is precisely where it remains. From the sealed corridors of Pyongyang, where state secrets are guarded behind steel and silence, we now transition into a completely different category of danger. Our path now leads us from a structure engineered for human endurance to a location where no people reside whatsoever. Here, encircled by slate-gray waves and beneath a low, heavy sky, sits a disintegrating island formed of concrete and perpetual shadow. This is Hashima Island, also referred to as Gunkanjima or Battleship Island. It is a location so saturated with human narrative and yet so utterly deserted that it feels suspended in time, adrift between collective memory and relentless physical decay. Situated just 15 kilometers from the shoreline of Nagasaki, Hashima emerges from the ocean like a formidable sea fortress. Its evocative nickname, Battleship Island, originates from its distinct profile, which from a distance resembles the silhouette of a massive warship. However, it was not conflict that constructed this place. It was coal. A deep undersea coal deposit lies beneath Hashima. In the late 19th century, the Mitsubishi industrial conglomerate recognized its significant economic potential. They excavated deep mining shafts below the ocean floor and erected substantial buildings to accommodate the laborers who would extract the primary fuel for Japan's era of rapid industrialization. And so, the island expanded, brick by brick, not only vertically but also horizontally, with new land reclaimed from the surrounding sea to create additional space for both industry and human habitation. During its period of maximum activity in the 1950s, Hashima was inhabited by more than 5,000 residents. It contained schools, retail shops, multi-story apartment blocks, a hospital, and even a cultivated rooftop garden, all constructed upon a minuscule sliver of bedrock measuring only 480 meters in length. It ranked among the most densely populated locations on the planet, more congested than the cores of Tokyo or New York. Families resided in cramped concrete apartments. Miners descended daily into the underground darkness, and community life persisted, enclosed by massive seawalls and the constant rhythm of the surrounding waves. Yet, while Hashima once stood as an emblem of industrial progress, its history bears a much heavier, darker burden. Throughout the Second World War, forced labor was implemented on the island. Korean and Chinese civilians and prisoners were transported here under brutal and coercive conditions, many without any consent and with no means of escape. They toiled within perilous mine shafts, lived in severely overcrowded barracks, and endured immense suffering from overwork, systematic malnutrition, and physical mistreatment. For these individuals, Hashima was not a marvel of modern engineering. It was a penitentiary built from stone and coal dust. Following the war, the island's mining operations continued, with extraction technology gradually improving and communal life slowly evolving. Children played games on the rooftops, families shared meals, and the constant mechanical hum of industry blended with the sound of the sea. However, the coal reserves were finite. As petroleum became the dominant global energy source throughout the 1960s, the demand for coal sharply declined. The mines began shutting down. Finally, in 1974, the Mitsubishi Corporation formally terminated all operations on Hashima. Every single resident departed. They left in great haste. Tools were abandoned where they were last held. Household furniture stayed inside apartments. Television sets, articles of clothing, personal books, all were left behind with no one to care for them. The island immediately commenced its process of decay. Rainwater poured through shattered window panes. Salt-laden sea wind scoured paint from the exterior walls. Roofs progressively collapsed. Entire building floors crumbled into powder. In less than 10 years, the once vibrant island transformed into a desolate ruin. A ghostly concrete vessel adrift just off the coast of Japan. What renders Hashima so profoundly haunting is the palpable sense of its arrested existence. Unlike ancient archaeological sites gradually worn away by millennia, this place is recent, modern, and unsettlingly recognizable. The architectural style is distinctly mid-20th century. The abandoned furnishings are contemporarily familiar. Personal photographs, official records, and everyday objects remain exactly where they were last placed, as though time itself simply stopped. It is a portrait of an entire community halted in mid-stride. For many decades, the island remained entirely closed to outsiders. It was deemed too structurally dangerous to explore and too isolated to maintain. Yet public fascination never truly dissipated. Eventually, strictly regulated guided tours were permitted to a small, stabilized section of the island. Visitors could now walk along specific secured pathways and observe the decaying edifices from a safe distance. However, the vast majority of Hashima remains strictly off-limits, its internal corridors and apartments too unstable and too hazardous to enter. What truly lies deeper within the heart of the island is still concealed from view. In 2015, Hashima was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, included as part of Japan's Sites of the Meiji Industrial Revolution. This decision ignited immediate international controversy. While it acknowledged the island's pivotal role in industrial history, it also forcefully revived painful debates concerning the wartime forced labor practices that occurred there. The Japanese government formally acknowledged that Korean and other laborers had been brought to the island under coercive conditions. Yet, for many survivors and their descendants, the historical wounds cut far deeper than any commemorative plaque can ever heal. Today, Hashima endures as a powerful symbol of both human ambition and its stark aftermath. It is a stark reminder of how swiftly a place can ascend to prominence and how abruptly it can be abandoned. It is not merely the physical buildings that are crumbling. It is the entire underlying concept that something constructed with such immense intensity and purpose could be so completely surrendered to the elemental forces of wind and water. Nevertheless, there exists a strange, melancholic beauty to Hashima. The sight of ivy vines infiltrating broken window frames, the soft natural light streaming through collapsed ceilings, the overwhelming silence interrupted only by the distant, rhythmic crash of waves against the seawall. It is a place where history seems to echo with every gust of wind, where the echoes of past voices linger in the empty hallways not as supernatural ghosts, but as indelible memories. For some observers, Hashima presents a dystopian vision of what occurs when industrial progress advances without ethical restraint. For others, it serves as a pristine time capsule, a perfectly preserved portal into a recent past. And for many Japanese citizens, particularly those with direct familial connections to the island, it represents a deeply complex and layered legacy. Feelings of national pride, historical pain, personal nostalgia, and respectful silence are all intertwined here. Hashima reminds us that profound isolation does not always occur in untamed wilderness. Sometimes, it manifests at the very center of human civilization, lingering just beyond our immediate sight. A place engineered to house thousands, now witnessed only by the endless sea and the occasional distant observer. Perhaps what makes Hashima most haunting is not solely what it once was, but what it stubbornly remains a place utterly untouched by contemporary modernization, unclaimed by any wave of redevelopment. It is not a curated museum, nor a ruin in the classical historical sense. It simply persists. Just offshore from a bustling, vibrant modern city, Hashima floats like a forgotten thought, half-living memory, half-weathered monument. It stands as a reminder that even the most meticulously constructed human worlds can ultimately fall silent. And sometimes it is that very silence which speaks to us the loudest. We now journey northward beyond the final stands of forest, past the very last stretches of paved road, into the stark and frozen earth of Russia. Here, one of the deepest holes ever created by humanity was bored, and where profound unknowns still dwell far below. Out on the remote Kola Peninsula, situated well beyond the Arctic Circle, fierce winds howl across barren rock and snow accumulates in every crevice of the landscape. It is an isolated, desolate, and profoundly silent region. Yet concealed here underneath a rusted metal cap and the decaying remains of Soviet-era aspiration lies the deepest artificial penetration of our planet. This is the Kola super-deep borehole. From the surface, its appearance is unremarkable. It is simply a welded metal lid, secured with heavy bolts, covering what seems to be a sealed industrial aperture. However, what extends beneath this cover stretches for over 12 kilometers into the terrestrial crust. This distance exceeds 40,000 feet downward, deeper than the profound depths of the Mariana Trench, deeper than any drill, mine, or mechanical probe has ever traveled. Its creation was never intended to be a secret. When Soviet scientists initiated drilling operations in 1970, it was a purely scientific endeavor, an ambitious attempt to enhance human understanding of the Earth's geological structure by descending as far as technology would allow. Yet, as with many phenomena hidden in plain view, what they eventually discovered became more disconcerting than anyone had predicted. The initiative, formally titled the Kola Super Deep Scientific Drilling Project, was part of a Cold War competition, though not for military supremacy but for fundamental knowledge. The United States had previously attempted a similar venture years earlier with Project Mohole, an effort to reach the Mohorovady discontinuity, the boundary between the crust and the mantle beneath the ocean floor. That mission was ultimately canceled. The Soviet Union, however, continued its pursuit. For 2 full decades, they drilled with relentless determination through successive strata of metamorphic rock, recording temperatures, measuring seismic activity, and gathering data from depths previously inaccessible to humankind. They proceeded past granite, past ancient basalt formations. At approximately 7 kilometers down, they encountered rocks aged over 2.7 billion years, among the most ancient geological samples ever retrieved. At 9 kilometers, they discovered microscopic fossilized plankton trapped within rock, where such organic remnants should have been geologically impossible. This finding defied all scientific expectations. Fossils of single-celled marine organisms preserved in rock that predated all known complex life. The explanation for their presence there? and how they endured the immense heat and pressure remains unresolved. Then came the overwhelming heat. As the borehole extended deeper, the ambient temperature increased at a rate far exceeding all predictive models. By the time the drill achieved its ultimate depth of 12,262 meters, the temperature approached 180 degrees Celsius, or 356 degrees Fahrenheit, vastly hotter than anticipated. The surrounding rock began to behave plastically, flowing and shifting around the drill bit. Critical equipment started to malfunction. Progress became agonizingly slow. Ultimately, the combined extremes of heat and geological pressure rendered further advancement impossible. In 1992, drilling ceased, but the stories surrounding the site did not. Over subsequent years, rumors began to cling to the borehole like legend to stone. Some individuals asserted the drill had broken into a vast subterranean cavern filled with superheated gas. Others claimed engineers had detected disturbing sounds emanating from the profound depths, strange noises, indistinct voices, even human screams. The infamous, "Well to hell, ho!" a sensational tabloid fabrication from the late 1980s, alleged that Soviet researchers had drilled directly into a fiery chamber of damnation, recording the tormented cries of the condemned before sealing the shaft forever. This tale was, of course, pure fiction, but its evocative imagery became permanently attached to the site. Even today, a search for information on the Kola Super Deep borehole yields as many paranormal anecdotes as legitimate geological reports. Perhaps this fusion is part of the enduring fascination. The Kola borehole is undeniably real. Its geographical coordinates are documented. One can travel to the location, though little remains visible now beyond scattered rusted debris and that sealed hatch embedded in the frozen ground. Yet it symbolizes something greater than a singular scientific project. It represents a tangible boundary between human knowledge and that which remains perpetually beyond our grasp. For even at over 12 kilometers deep, the drill barely penetrated the outermost skin of the Earth's crust. The continental crust averages between 30 and 50 kilometers in thickness. Beneath it lies the mantle, a colossal layer no physical instrument has ever contacted. Further below resides the planet's molten outer core, and finally, the solid iron inner heart. The Kola project was monumentally ambitious and groundbreaking, yet within the grand scale of the Earth's interior, it amounted to scarcely more than a pinprick. Nevertheless, the data it collected fundamentally altered scientific understanding. Researchers discovered that seismic waves did not propagate as theoretical models had predicted. They found water present deep within the crust where none should have existed. They observed that granite could behave like a sponge under inconceivable pressure. Each geological stratum revealed a new narrative. Every core sample retrieved carried whispers of time so immensely ancient it challenges human comprehension. Eventually, financial support evaporated. The collapse of the Soviet Union ushered in severe economic hardship, and the project was formally abandoned. The research facility fell into disrepair. The main Dirac Tower was dismantled in 2008. In the present day, the sole remaining artifact is that welded steel cap. It has been poetically labeled the doorway to hell, though no heat emanates from it. No sound ascends from its depths, only cold metal and the constant, quiet Arctic wind. The Kola borehole exists as a paradox. It is the deepest excavation humanity has ever achieved, yet it remains inconceivably distant from the Earth's core. It was conceived to provide definitive answers, but it generated just as many profound new questions. It stands now not as a monument to triumphant success, but to the very limits of human physical reach. We can voyage into outer space. We can dispatch robotic explorers to the surface of Mars. Yet when we attempt to dig too deeply into our own world, it is as if the planet itself resists. What truly lies beyond that ultimate depth? We possess theoretical models, certainly. We have seismic interpretations, but we have nothing we have physically touched. No instruments have ever retrieved samples from the mantle. No drill has reached the base of the crust. And the deeper we aspire to go, the more wildly unpredictable conditions become: heat, pressure, material composition. The ground beneath our feet remains in countless essential ways an enduring mystery. There is something inherently eerie in this realization. The notion that we possess more concrete knowledge about the surface of other planets than we do about the deep interior of our own. That directly below the familiar soil and stone lies an entirely uncharted world. This is not because it is forbidden or imbued with magic, but because it actively resists our intrusion. The deeper we strive to venture, the more powerfully the Earth reminds us of its inconceivable age, its immense force, its absolute silence. Thus, the Kola Super Deep borehole remains sealed. Not out of fear of what it might contain, but because the current limits of scientific and engineering possibility were definitively reached. And perhaps this is the most haunting aspect of all. Not the fabricated rumors of screams or eerie sounds, but the overwhelming, final silence. The simple, definitive resistance of the Earth, which drew an absolute line at 12,262 meters and declared, "Not yet." As we depart from this site, it is valuable to pause and consider what it truly represents: ambition, boundless curiosity, and relentless persistence, but also necessary humility. For all our advanced technology, for all our accumulated knowledge, there are still places deep, fundamental places that remind us we are merely visitors upon the surface. They remind us that some of the greatest mysteries do not reside in the distant stars, but lie waiting in the ancient, impenetrable ground directly beneath our feet. Our focus now shifts from the untamed expanses of pristine wilderness to a location that is far more deliberately conceived. It is not concealed by dense jungle or ocean depths, but by purposeful, meticulous design. Situated a mere 70 miles from Washington, D.C., resting quietly within the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, exists a place that is not deserted, not ancient, and not falling into ruin. It is sealed, fully operational, and intensively guarded. This is Mount Weather, recognized as one of the most clandestine emergency installations in the United States. This facility exists not as a leftover from history, but as a prepared blueprint for a potential future, specifically a future defined by profound crisis. The name Mount Weather might evoke images of peaceful scenery, even pastoral beauty. Yet behind that unassuming title resides an extensive and heavily fortified complex administered by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, commonly known as FEMA. Its official, stated function is the preservation of governmental continuity. Should a cataclysmic event occur, a nuclear exchange, a devastating biological assault, or a total collapse of the nation's critical infrastructure, Mount Weather is the designated destination for the country's highest-ranking officials. And once they proceed inside, no one else is permitted to accompany them. The historical origins of Mount Weather can be traced directly to the Cold War, an era when the pervasive dread of nuclear confrontation influenced everything from school safety exercises to fundamental architectural principles. During the 1950s, as the looming threat of Soviet intercontinental missiles grew increasingly tangible, the United States government commenced the construction of subterranean facilities engineered to withstand and outlast any potential attack. Mount Weather was among the most significant of these ambitious projects. Built directly underneath 400 acres of mountainous terrain, it functions as a self-sufficient underground metropolis, complete with independent power generation, secure water supplies, advanced air filtration systems, residential dormitories, fully equipped medical facilities, and a dedicated broadcast system capable of overriding all public television and radio transmissions. However, if one attempts to seek specific information about this facility, very little substantive detail will be found. Pertinent facts are exceedingly scarce, shrouded within multiple layers of national security classification. Even the precise geographical location of the site remains ambiguous on most publicly available maps. There exist only satellite photographs of limited clarity, occasional and vague official press statements, and sporadic mentions within broader federal planning documents, but virtually no first-hand, detailed accounts from individuals with direct experience. Those select few who have been granted access almost never speak publicly about what they saw, and the personnel permanently stationed there operate under the strictest possible security clearances. It is crucial to understand that this place is not abandoned. Quite the contrary. Mount Weather is continuously maintained, perpetually monitored, and ready to be activated whenever the situation demands it. Following the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, the facility was reportedly utilized to provide secure shelter for key members of congressional leadership. Its fundamental design purpose is to survive scenarios in which the remainder of the nation does not. This inherent purpose contributes significantly to its unsettling aura. While the majority of hidden places serve as echoes from a distant past, Mount Weather represents a concrete and highly disquieting plan for a potential future. The limited knowledge we do possess arrives in the form of scattered indirect clues. A journalistic investigation published by the Progressive magazine in 1974 described an expansive, city-like underground structure beneath the mountain, complete with internal roadways and buildings. Other reports and analyses suggest the presence of a comprehensive national operations center capable of directing FEMA's emergency response across the entire country and coordinating vital communications during a nationwide catastrophe. While such descriptions might evoke the feeling of science fiction, the Mount Weather facility is not a myth or legend. It has been formally referenced during congressional oversight hearings. It appears explicitly within federal emergency response protocols. It is connected both in a metaphorical and in a literal, physical sense to an entire network of other continuity of government bunkers distributed across the nation. Consider analogous installations like Raven Rock in Pennsylvania or the complex inside Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado. Collectively, they form a kind of subterranean support infrastructure, one that operates quietly beneath the surface of everyday national awareness. Mount Weather remains distinctive, however, in its particular combination of extreme secrecy with remarkable physical proximity. It is not buried in some isolated, far-flung corner of the globe. It is located just a brief drive away from one of the planet's most powerful political capitals. Ordinary citizens reside in neighboring communities. Public roads pass relatively close by. Yet, whatever occurs beyond its security fences, behind its surveillance cameras, and deep under the mountain itself, is sealed away from public view, deliberately and for an indefinite duration. Furthermore, unlike ancient historical ruins or abandoned industrial sites, Mount Weather does not invite casual exploration or curiosity. There are no public tours offered, no detailed public reports released, and no offhand remarks shared by former employees. In fact, even attempting to photograph the perimeter of the site from a distance is highly likely to prompt immediate attention from security personnel. It is protected not merely by barriers of barbed wire, but by a profound institutionalized silence, a silence that feels heavier and more impenetrable than any natural geographical barrier. It is precisely this paradox that generates the unique tension surrounding Mount Weather. It is not haunted by ghosts of the past. Instead, it is meticulously prepared for a hypothetical future that most of us would prefer not to contemplate. A future where ordinary citizens remain outside the closed gates, while national leadership is preserved not in a symbolic sense, but through literal, physical shelter deep within a mountain. While this arrangement may possess a logical rationale from a strict governmental standpoint, it simultaneously paints a stark and unsettling picture of how fragile our societal systems truly are beneath the surface. In a contemporary world where access to information and places is often taken for granted, Mount Weather stands as a potent reminder that certain doors are designed to remain permanently closed, that certain contingency plans operate at a security clearance far above the public's reach, and that should the truly unthinkable ever transpire, there exists a select group of individuals who already possess exact knowledge of where to go and what to do, while the remainder of the population would be left to navigate the chaos entirely on their own. Yet, despite its formidable secrecy, Mount Weather is not inherently a villainous entity. It is conceived as a safeguard, a critical contingency, a final resort engineered not for the accumulation of power, but for the bare survival of constitutional continuity. This context does not render the facility any less disquieting to consider, but it does introduce a necessary complexity to its enduring mystery. It exists in a conceptual space suspended between necessary protection and explicit exclusion, between prudent preparedness and latent societal paranoia. As is true for many of the extraordinary places we have examined, Mount Weather ultimately provokes more questions than it provides answers. How much of the circulating information about its capabilities is accurate? To what distances do its underground tunnels truly extend? Precisely who holds the authority to activate it? And what definitive protocols are followed once those protocols are initiated? With these lingering questions, we now continue our exploration onward. Our journey now returns from the profound depths beneath the Earth's crust, turning instead toward the outermost boundary of the habitable world, to a location so isolated and so severe that it has earned the title of the most Mars-like environment on our planet. This comparison is not due to a reddish hue or visible meteor craters, but rather because of its profound and overwhelming silence. Devon Island, located in the Canadian Arctic archipelago, is the largest uninhabited island on Earth. It contains no towns, no permanent human residents, only limitless expanses of rock, ice, and relentless wind. If a person were deposited there without any forewarning, they might initially doubt they were still on their home planet. Encompassing more than 21,000 square miles, Devon Island sits within the high Arctic region above the 75th parallel north. For the majority of the annual cycle, the island is encased in solid ice. Air temperatures can plummet far below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and the brief Arctic summer is chilly, harsh, and rarely offers any genuine respite. Rivers and valleys exist across the landscape, but they are predominantly frozen. The terrain appears scarred and lifeless, sculpted over owns by glacial movement and by impacts from ancient celestial bodies. It feels untouched not merely by human presence, but by the very passage of time itself. At the geographical center of Devon Island lies the Houghton Impact Crater, a formation approximately 23 million years old, created by the colossal collision of an asteroid with the Earth's surface. This massive depression measures roughly 12 miles in diameter. The cataclysmic event left behind a fractured, chaotic terrain and exposed deep layers of primordial bedrock. The surface here is arid, relentlessly scarred by wind, and almost completely lacking in plant life conditions that render it uncannily analogous to the surface of the planet Mars. This precise similarity is the reason the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, conducts missions here. Since the latter part of the 1990s, Devon Island has functioned as a vital training and testing ground for planetary geologists, prospective astronauts, and dedicated researchers. The Hot and Mars Project, one of the cornerstone scientific initiatives on the island, leverages this extreme environment to simulate the conditions of future human expeditions to Mars. Robotic rovers are field-tested across its rocky plains. Prototype spacesuits are worn and their performance evaluated. Teams of scientists live in isolated camp conditions to study the psychological and logistical challenges human crews would face when entirely severed from terrestrial civilization. This endeavor is not a theatrical performance or a publicity stunt. It constitutes serious, methodical preparation. The island's profound desolation makes it the perfect location for this work. Yet Devon Island represents more than merely a convenient terrestrial stand-in for another planet. It also stands as one of the most compelling natural testimonies to the lengths humanity will extend in its quest to comprehend the vast unknown. The island's merciless conditions, permafrost, hurricane force winds, treacherous rocky ground force every single human action to be calculated and deliberate. This inherent difficulty is precisely what preserves the island's deep mystery. The majority of Devon Island's vast interior remains unexplored by human foot. Valleys and ridgelines exist that no one has ever traversed. Caves are tucked into icy cliff faces, and hidden streams may have flowed for millennia without ever being witnessed by human eyes. Very little biological life persists here. A few hardy species of moss and lichen cling to rocks in sparse, scattered patches. There are no trees and virtually no natural shelter from the biting wind. Animal populations are exceptionally scarce. Small herds of musk oxen roam alongside the occasional Arctic fox or hare, and migratory birds pass through during the fleeting summer weeks. However, for most of the year, there exists nothing but the endless sound of wind rushing across bare stone. One could hike for countless miles and never encounter another living creature. This absolute solitude is, paradoxically, what draws scientific and exploratory minds to the island. Devon Island is completely uninhabited throughout the entire year. No permanent villages exist, and no research stations operate during the brutal Arctic winter. In practical terms, the only viable method of arrival or departure is via chartered aircraft during the short summer season, landing on a rough, gravel airstrip situated near the rim of the Houghton crater. When the seasonal research crews finally depart, they leave everything behind, not only their technical equipment and temporary structures, but also the profound stillness. The deep quiet settles back over the land like a blanket. Fresh snow smoothly covers all footprints. The ceaseless wind erases every tangible memory of the recent human presence. There is something almost haunting about a place of this nature. Devon Island is undeniably real. It is charted on maps, it possesses a formal name, and it is the subject of scientific study, yet it retains a feeling of primal, untouched wilderness. It invites a distinct form of curiosity, not the excited thrill of initial discovery, but the sobering weight of its implication. What does it signify that places like this still exist on our planet? Places where the natural world has simply continued its ancient cycles entirely without us, utterly indifferent and fundamentally unchanged. Certain portions of the island have yet to be fully surveyed by ground teams. The sheer vastness of the terrain, combined with its ruggedness and extreme inaccessibility, makes comprehensive, detailed mapping a monumental challenge. Satellite imagery provides a broad overview, of course, but it cannot replicate the intimate, granular understanding gained from physically standing on the ground. In many significant ways, Devon Island represents one of the final locations on Earth that still holds the genuine possibility for true terrestrial exploration of the unknown. One does not need to voyage across the galaxy to encounter truly alien landscapes. Sometimes, one simply needs to travel north. While the island is profoundly silent in the present era, it has not always been devoid of human awareness. Indigenous peoples, Particularly the ancestral Thule and Dorset cultures once traversed the broader Arctic region, though archaeological evidence suggests they never established permanent settlements on Devon Island itself. The reasons are almost certainly practical: too cold, too barren, too isolated. Even for nomadic hunter-gatherers supremely adapted to Arctic life, Devon Island offered too little sustenance or shelter. Today, the island falls within the Kikituluk region of Nunavut, and its Inuktitut name, Tatlerut, still carries cultural and historical meaning within the broader memory of the land, largely due to its enduring isolation and its pristine, preserved geology. Beyond its role in space analog research, Devon Island also attracts considerable interest from paleontologists and climate scientists. The island's exposed geological strata provide invaluable windows into the Earth's distant climatic and biological past, while its current severe climate patterns assist in modeling potential future environmental shifts. Every scientific expedition to this place is therefore not solely about preparing for space. It is also fundamentally about time, about gazing back millions of years through the silent language of stone ice and undisturbed silence. To physically step onto the surface of Devon Island, however, is to experience the sensation that you are no longer quite on the familiar planet Earth. Even the most experienced field researchers speak of the profound, almost palpable stillness and the deep sense of separation it instills. It is not merely the absence of other people. It is the complete absence of any indication that people were ever meant to be here at all. You do not simply walk across Devon Island. You tread with immense care and respect, cognizant that this is a place the Earth has held tightly in reserve, a place that has resisted permanent occupation. Naturally, stories and speculation arise around any location this remote and this alien. Tales occasionally surface of unexplained lights observed in satellite data, or unverified claims of clandestine military monitoring or other classified activities somewhere in the region. These narratives almost never arrive accompanied by credible evidence, and yet they persist in the public imagination. This persistence exists because Devon Island feels, in essence, like a well-kept secret. It does not feature locked gates or official signs warning visitors away. It simply makes the act of arriving there in the first place incredibly, dauntingly difficult. This inherent inaccessibility is perhaps what grants the island its eerie, powerful aura. It is not explicitly forbidden territory. It simply does not extend an invitation. It is a place that actively resists human habitation, a place where people can only ever be temporary visitors. Consequently, when the NASA research teams pack their gear and depart, when the first heavy snows of autumn begin to fall anew, Devon Island reverts seamlessly to what it has always been: a massive, silent expanse of rock and ice, a terrestrial proxy for Mars, a direct glimpse of another world's environment, and one of the final places on this Earth where a human being can authentically, overwhelmingly, feel completely alone, if you are ever fortunate, or perhaps unfortunate, enough to stand at the very center of the Houghton crater with nothing but the immense Arctic sky above and barren rocks stretching toward every horizon. You will come to a definitive understanding. Devon Island does not require manufactured myths or romantic legends. Its essential mystery is contained entirely within its immense silence. Its entire story is written in the language of cold wind and ancient stone. And when you eventually leave, the island will not remember you were ever there. From a distance, it appears as merely another expansive section of green within a vast sea of vegetation. However, once you comprehend its true nature, it becomes impossible to dismiss from your thoughts. Our focus now shifts from arid dust to the oppressive humidity of the deep Amazon rainforest, a region where the land is so profoundly remote that even advanced satellite technology struggles to clearly discern what exists below the dense interwoven canopy. We are not, however, journeying toward the more familiar sectors charted on standard maps or frequented by tourist vessels. We are venturing westward, toward one of the planet's final authentic frontiers, a place where constructed roads dissolve into nothing, where electronic signals fade into static, and where the forest canopy closes tightly overhead, forming an almost solid ceiling above the ground. This is the Javari Valley, a region so immensely vast, so geographically isolated, and so densely packed with ancient trees that it persists as one of the least investigated and understood locations on Earth. It is not a place that has been abandoned. Rather, it is a territory deliberately and intentionally left undisturbed by external forces. Situated along the international border separating Brazil and Peru, the Javari Valley Indigenous Territory spans an area exceeding 85,000 square kilometers, a landmass approximately equivalent in size to the entire nation of Austria. Yet it is not the sheer scale of this territory that cultivates its profound mystery. It is what, or more precisely, who, resides within its boundaries. The Javari Valley serves as the homeland for the world's greatest concentration of documented uncontacted indigenous tribes. Dozens of distinct groups, and potentially many more, live deep within the forest's interior, maintaining cultural practices and lifeways that predate the modern industrialized world by thousands of years. A significant number of these communities have never established peaceful, voluntary communication with the global society that exists beyond their forest. They are not spectral apparitions or anthropological myths. Evidence from satellite observation and specialized flyover photography has confirmed unmistakable traces of human activity: small, cleared garden plots, narrow footpaths visible from above, and clusters of small, circular dwellings with thatched roofs arranged around communal open spaces. Video footage captured during rare, low-altitude reconnaissance flights has shown individuals peering upward from the treetops, often armed with traditional bows, either gesturing with clear intent or quickly retreating from view as aircraft pass overhead. These human beings are authentically real, and they are actively choosing to maintain their distance and autonomy. The federal government of Brazil has formally acknowledged the existence of these isolated peoples, and in an uncommon and decisive policy, has enacted stringent protective legislation around their territory. Entering the Javari Valley without specific, high-level governmental authorization is not merely discouraged, it is expressly forbidden by law. This prohibition exists not primarily to safeguard the safety of external visitors, but to protect the vulnerable populations living inside. Many of these isolated groups lack acquired immunological resistance to common global pathogens such as influenza or measles. A single, unknowingly transmitted illness introduced by a well-meaning visitor could trigger a catastrophic epidemic, potentially eradicating entire communities. Beyond this immediate physical danger lies a deeper ethical consideration. What inherent right does the external world possess to impose its presence upon lives that have not solicited, and in fact explicitly reject, any form of contact? Despite these legal protections, the region is not entirely free from external dangers. Illegal commercial loggers, clandestine miners, and wildlife poachers periodically infiltrate the territorial boundaries. Networks for international drug trafficking weave clandestine routes along the forest periphery. In recent years, escalating tensions have erupted between those seeking to plunder the region's natural resources and the dedicated individuals and organizations tasked with its defense. The international community was profoundly shaken in 2022 by the tragic murders of British journalist Dom Phillips and respected Brazilian indigenous affairs expert Bruno Pereira, who were conducting research into illegal activities within the area. Their deaths underscored with stark clarity just how perilous and fiercely contested this remote territory remains. Nevertheless, Even with these sporadic incursions, the overwhelming majority of the Javari Valley persists in a state of pristine, undisturbed wilderness. Vast, uninterrupted sections have never been subjected to formal scientific survey or ground-based exploration. The terrain is relentlessly unforgiving. Rivers meander in unpredictable courses through walls of thick foliage. Mountainous formations rise abruptly from otherwise flat jungle lowlands. The forest itself resonates with a constant, vibrant hum of biological life: birds, countless insects, amphibians, and elusive predators like the jaguar. Beneath this living canopy rest the profoundly unknowable civilizations, both past and present, that may forever remain absent from the pages of academic textbooks or the halls of museums. There exists a quietly humbling dimension to this reality. In a contemporary era where observation satellites orbit every corner of the globe, where artificial intelligence algorithms attempt to model complex human behavior, and where urban centers grow taller and more interconnected each year, the very concept that entire, fully functioning human communities exist without internet connectivity, electrical grids, monetary systems, or even personal names as the outside world understands them, is a notion difficult for many to fully comprehend. Yet here they undeniably are, not mere relics of a bygone era, but active, breathing societies possessing their own intricate governance systems, cultural rules, unique languages, and sophisticated cosmological understandings of the universe. Linguistic researchers estimate that the Amazon basin as a whole may contain over 150 languages that remain entirely undocumented by external science. A significant proportion of these languages likely exist within the confines of the Javari region, spoken by perhaps only a few hundred individuals at most, and transmitted orally from one generation to the next. For these tongues there exists almost no written record, no dictionaries, no formal grammars, no translators, only living memory and the human voice itself. These languages, some of which are genetically unrelated to any other known linguistic family on Earth, represent entire, distinct frameworks for conceptualizing reality. They embody complete systems for classifying the natural world, for understanding mythology, for spatial navigation, for measuring time, and for defining kinship that exists nowhere else but here, under this specific expanse of trees. On rare occasions, fragmented insights reach the outside world. Oral history shared by neighboring, contacted indigenous tribes groups who may have had ancestral links, engaged in past trade, or experienced historical conflicts with the isolated communities offer fleeting, indirect glimpses into these uncontacted lives. Some narratives tell of ancestors who fled from violent encounters with outsiders, retreating ever deeper into the forest's heart to preserve their autonomy and way of life. Others speak of profound spiritual or philosophical decisions, recounting how certain groups consciously chose to reject all external influences, guided by a belief that the forest itself commanded such separation. To these peoples, outsiders are not simply unknown entities, they are considered spiritually dangerous and culturally taboo. Adding another layer to the region's enigma is its archaeological potential. What historical secrets lie concealed beneath the forest floor? In other sectors of the Amazon, advanced LiDAR technology, a form of aerial laser scanning, has revealed the outlines of massive prehistoric earthworks, ancient roadway networks, and complex, city-like structures hidden beneath centuries of accumulated foliage. We now understand that the Amazon was not a pristine, empty wilderness, but was once home to dense populations and sophisticated societies long before the arrival of European colonizers. Could the Javari Valley hold similar, undiscovered archaeological secrets? Could its winding rivers have once functioned as bustling aquatic highways? Could its natural clearings have served as ancient marketplaces? We may never obtain definitive answers, And this enduring uncertainty is integral to the profound gravity the Javari Valley possesses. It is not an open book awaiting our interpretation. It actively resists being read. It serves as a powerful reminder that our world is not entirely ours to categorize, to explain, or to access. There exist places where human curiosity must be tempered by profound respect, where the only responsible response to profound mystery is deliberate, respectful silence. In the present day, the Javari Valley is monitored under the guardianship of Brazil's National Indian Foundation, known as FUNAI, in partnership with indigenous advocacy associations and various non-governmental organizations dedicated to territorial protection. Surveillance is conducted primarily from the air, utilizing remote sensors and occasional patrols along the territory's fringes. Significant efforts are also directed toward training and employing indigenous rangers, individuals who comprehend the land not as abstract lines on a government map, but as a living, breathing territory imbued with ancestral memory, inherent danger, and deep spiritual meaning. Yet the future of this place remains fragile and uncertain. Pressures from global climate change, unpredictable political shifts within national governments, and relentless international economic forces all pose severe, ongoing risks to regions like the Javari. It would require only a minimal disturbance to upset the delicate equilibrium, to catalyze further incursions into the forest, to instigate more deforestation, or to introduce unintended contact. Once such irreversible changes occur, there exists no possible method to restore what was lost, to return the land and its peoples to a state of unspoiled autonomy. Ultimately, the Javari Valley stands not as a destination to be explored or conquered, but as a world to be preserved and left in peace. It is not abandoned, it is actively protected. It represents one of the final regions on our planet where a chapter of the human story continues to unfold in a parallel, undisturbed narrative, not in concert with the globalized present, but entirely separate from it. Here, time is perceived and measured differently, and the concerns of the modern external world are not merely unwelcome. They are rendered wholly and utterly irrelevant. A short distance from the southeastern coastline of Brazil, within the Atlantic Ocean, not far from the city of São Paulo, sits a location that presents a facade of tranquility when viewed from afar. It appears as a green speck upon the vast blue waters, a silent island seemingly pristine and calm. Yet this is not a destination you are permitted to visit. Not any longer. Ilha de Queimada Grande, more widely recognized by its ominous moniker, Snake Island, ranks among the most stringently forbidden places on the planet. No tourists are allowed, no casual excursions are tolerated, no one may set foot upon its shore. The force that keeps humanity at bay is not governmental secrecy or international political strife. It is something far more ancient and fundamentally primal. This island belongs entirely to serpents, and not to any ordinary snakes, but to some of the most perilous reptiles in existence. Snake Island is modest in physical size, encompassing only approximately 106 acres of land. It ascends from the ocean waves like a solitary, verdant hill cloaked in dense rainforest and encircled by sheer, jagged cliffs. There exist no sandy beaches, no harbors for boats, and no permanent human settlement of any kind. The Brazilian Navy maintains absolute control over all access to the island, granting permission to land only to a carefully chosen few primarily specialized researchers, herpetologists, or essential military personnel, and even then only after obtaining rigorous security clearance and adhering to stringent safety protocols. The rationale for this extreme level of control is straightforward and stark. The island serves as the exclusive, global habitat for a unique species of pit viper found nowhere else on Earth, the golden lancehead viper, scientifically named Bothrops insularis. This is a beautiful designation for a profoundly terrifying creature. These serpents can grow to lengths exceeding half a meter, and their venom is estimated to be up to 5 times more powerful and potent than that of their closest mainland relatives. Its effects are not merely agonizing, they are rapid and catastrophic, capable of inducing severe tissue necrosis and causing vital organ systems to fail within mere hours if antivenom treatment is not administered. No precise census exists for the golden lancehead population inhabiting Snake Island, but scientific approximations have historically ranged from 1 to as many as 5 individual snakes per square meter in the most densely occupied zones of the territory. This statistic is not hyperbole. They inhabit the dense undergrowth, they coil among the tree branches, they lurk within rocky crevices. This is their sovereign domain, and they do not cede it willingly. The profound geographical isolation of the island over millennia is the key factor that forged this unique and deadly population. Thousands of years in the past, as global sea levels rose and the landmass was severed from the continental mainland, a population of ancestral lancehead vipers became permanently marooned. Devoid of natural predators and with no native terrestrial mammals available to hunt, the snakes underwent a remarkable evolutionary adaptation. Avian species, particularly migratory birds that use the island as a seasonal resting point during their long journeys, became their primary prey source. Consequently, the venom of the golden lancehead evolved to be extraordinarily fast, acting and efficient, ensuring that a struck bird could not simply fly away to perish elsewhere. Over countless successive generations, the snakes became increasingly specialized, more lethally effective, and utterly unique to this singular, isolated environment. The island itself did not acquire its menacing nickname by mere chance. Legends and stories concerning Snake Island have proliferated for many decades, often laced with dramatic embellishment, yet rooted in a foundation of very genuine and extreme peril. One of the most frequently recounted narratives tells of a lighthouse keeper and his entire family who once resided on the island during the early decades of the 20th century. According to this enduring folklore, the family was overrun and attacked by snakes that infiltrated their dwelling through open windows, by climbing exterior vines, and even by descending from the roof structure. The story concludes with no survivors. While this specific account may have been amplified and distorted through oral retelling over time, it remains factually accurate that the island's manned lighthouse was permanently decommissioned and replaced with an automated system during the 1920s. Since that era, no human beings have established a permanent residence there. It is exceptionally rare for any geographical location to be so comprehensively shunned by humanity, not for political ideology or due to an intolerable climate, but because the natural world simply prevailed. The snakes assumed complete dominion, and humankind yielded the territory to them. This dynamic, in a profound sense, is what renders Snake Island so uniquely compelling. It is not solely the element of physical danger. It is the overarching concept that a place exists where human civilization never truly established a foothold, a territory to which we fundamentally do not belong. Visually, the island appears lush and deceptively peaceful. The forest canopy sways gently in the ocean breeze, and sunlit rocky outcrops gleam. However, beneath that serene surface of leaves, within dark crevices and shadowed groves, the golden lancehead vipers glide almost without a sound. Researchers who have been granted the rare privilege to visit describe the experience as simultaneously exhilarating and deeply unnerving. Every footstep must be placed with extreme caution. Every overhanging branch must be scrutinized. No one remains on the island for an extended duration. The conservationist community maintains a complex and nuanced relationship with Snake Island. On one critical hand, the golden lancehead viper is classified as a critically endangered species. Its entire global population is confined to this solitary island, and potential threats such as environmental degradation or illegal wildlife poaching could lead to its complete extinction. Conversely, the act of preserving the island and its unique ecosystem inherently necessitates keeping it off limits to human activity. Protecting the species directly equates to maintaining a strict exclusion zone around their habitat. This delicate equilibrium has thus far been successfully maintained. Access remains tightly governed. The Brazilian Navy conducts only occasional essential visits. Biologists are permitted to work within brief, carefully controlled time frames, primarily to conduct population surveys or to collect minute venom samples for vital medical research, including potential applications in pharmaceuticals and antivenom development. While the threat of illegal poaching exists as a persistent risk, the island's formidable isolation and the snake's deadly reputation serve as powerful deterrents. There also persists a peculiar aura of mystery surrounding the golden lancehead itself, precisely because it is so lethal, so geographically isolated, and so seldom observed by human eyes. It occupies a strange niche within the collective public imagination. It is a confirmed biological reality, yet feels incredibly distant. It is scientifically documented, yet remains profoundly elusive. The kind of creature that seems to belong as much to mythology as to a peer-reviewed academic journal, Snake Island also functions as a potent, silent testament to how ecosystems can undergo dramatic transformation when left entirely to their own evolutionary processes, without human interference, without natural predators, and within a context of highly constrained resources. The resident snakes adapted in radical, extreme ways. The island stands as a compelling natural case study in rapid evolutionary specialization and the powerful effects of geographical isolation, a living laboratory demonstrating how a species can transform when geography forces it into an ecological corner. Yet the island's significance extends beyond mere scientific curiosity. There is an undeniably eerie quality to its existence. The mere thought of stepping onto its shore, not knowing precisely where the imminent danger lies concealed, the sensation of being observed by scores of silent, cold-blooded observers as you intrude upon their world, the stark understanding that no rescue would be forthcoming should something go awry. It is the kind of place that viscerally diminishes a person. That underscores our temporary and fragile presence. Ilha de Queimada Grande is not a secret, yet it is also not widely recognized in common knowledge. It does not feature in tourist agency brochures. There are no glamorous photographic essays celebrating its beauty, no guided expedition tours. It persists almost like a cautionary tale whispered among those who know acknowledged, yet fundamentally untouchable. And perhaps this is precisely the condition in which it should forever remain. Because certain locations, for all their inherent beauty and intrigue, are meant to be left entirely undisturbed. Certain territories simply do not desire our presence. They do not extend an invitation for our exploration. They have no need for our footprints. Snake Island is unequivocally one of those places, a wild, pulsing ecosystem where nature established its own inviolable rules and demonstrates no intention of ever amending them. In a contemporary world where untamed natural spaces continue to shrink, where virtually every corner of the globe appears meticulously mapped and commodified, it is profoundly strange to consider that one of Earth's most genuinely mysterious locales simply sits anchored off the coast of one of the planet's most populous and bustling nations. No locked gates bar the way, no towering security walls encircle it, just a quiet island, holding all of its lethal secrets in plain sight for the ocean and the sky to witness. Not far from the gentle, shimmering glow that reflects off the waterways of Venice, there exists an island that few local residents discuss openly, and even fewer individuals ever choose to approach. A place enveloped by encroaching vegetation and a profound quiet, where the heavy burden of history seems permanently affixed to every weathered stone. This is Poveglia Island. Tucked discreetly within the Venetian lagoon, Poveglia is scarcely noticeable on the vast majority of tourist-oriented maps. It is a modest landmass, merely a slender sliver of earth positioned between the famous city of Venice and the neighboring Lido Island. And yet, the narrative associated with this small plot of land spans many centuries. In contrast to the absolute, desolate remoteness that characterizes some of the other locations we have examined, Poveglia exists in remarkably close proximity to one of the world's most celebrated and visited urban centers. You can observe it from a passing watercraft, catch a glimpse of it from a specific vantage point within Venice itself, but an exceedingly small number of people ever journey toward it. An even smaller number actually disembark upon its soil, and even among the native Venetian population, the island is mentioned with a palpable sense of discomfort and apprehension. Upon initial inspection, there appears to be nothing particularly extraordinary about its appearance. The landscape is dominated by overgrown trees, an aged bell tower that rises from the island's central area, and various crumbling structures whose harsh edges have been softened by the relentless passage of time. However, it is the profound and absolute silence that ultimately affects a visitor most deeply. There are no birds singing here, no signs of movement behind the empty window frames. The walking paths have been entirely consumed by thick layers of ivy. The natural world has made a concerted effort to cloak and conceal the past, but it has not been entirely successful. The historical identity of Poveglia is not defined by a single, dramatic event. It is instead a gradual, slow accumulation, a sedimentary layering of human suffering and imposed silence that has built up over the course of hundreds of years. Each distinct historical chapter bleeds indistinctly into the subsequent one, and none of these chapters conclude in a gentle or peaceful manner. During the era of the Roman Empire, the island was most likely utilized as a temporary place of refuge, employed by inhabitants of the mainland seeking to escape the successive waves of invading armies that swept through northern Italy. It served as a provisional shelter, quiet and removed, surrounded by the protective waters of the lagoon. By the time the 14th century arrived, the functional role of Poveglia had undergone a significant and grim transformation. Venice, a powerful city-state deeply enmeshed in expansive Mediterranean trade networks, was also perilously vulnerable to the epidemic diseases that traveled along those same commercial routes. The Black Death had carved its devastating path across the European continent, and the pragmatic yet terrified citizens of Venice required a defensive buffer zone. Poveglia was converted into a lazaretto, a mandatory quarantine station. Incoming merchant vessels arriving from foreign ports were compelled to anchor in the vicinity. Any passengers or crew members who displayed even the most minor, initial symptoms of contagious illness were forcibly transported ashore and isolated on the island for a standard period of 40 days, the quarantena. During this anxious waiting period, some individuals eventually recovered, but a great many others did not. This policy was an act of desperate public health management, but it was simultaneously an act of quiet, collective abandonment. In the 18th century, as renewed outbreaks of bubonic plague returned to haunt the region, Poveglia's purpose darkened and intensified even further. The island's facilities were physically expanded and formally organized into a comprehensive, permanent quarantine complex complete with regimented check-in procedures, dedicated confinement buildings, and a permanent staff charged with managing the endless, tragic influx of the sick and the dying. By this historical point, the island had already witnessed a considerable share of human trauma. Yet what transpired next left a permanent and even deeper psychological imprint upon the location. Thousands of people were dispatched here, often with very little advance warning. Entire extended families were uprooted from their homes in Venice and relocated to the island's narrow strip of land, left to endure the progression of a disease for which contemporary medicine possessed no cure. Once deposited on Poveglia, a significant number of these individuals were never seen or heard from again. As the number of deceased accumulated more rapidly than they could be given proper burials, the island transformed from a mere place of quarantine into a grim site for mass disposal. Enormous plague pits were excavated. Funeral pyres burned continuously day and night. Human corpses were layered with quicklime and ash in an attempt to hasten decomposition and contain infection. And when one pit reached capacity, another was promptly dug. Some historical accounts, which remain unverifiable yet persistently circulate, even claim that the accumulated cremated ashes and decomposing remains were simply tilled directly into the island's soil. By the conclusion of the 1700s, the fundamental composition of the island itself had been physically altered. Certain researchers and historians have suggested that the very ground of Poveglia is now partially constituted of processed human remains, a mixture of ash and fragmented bone integrated beneath the surface. Thousands of individual lives were literally folded into the land, and beneath the tangled networks of vines and the precariously leaning structures, they remain there still. The governing authorities of Venice eventually permanently shuttered the plague quarantine facility, but the island was not granted peace. In the year 1922, it was dramatically transformed once more, this time into a dedicated psychiatric hospital. It represented the kind of institution that societies of that era deliberately constructed far from public view, isolated, remote, and functionally out of reach. During a period when mental illness was poorly understood by science and widely feared by the general populace, standard treatment modalities range from the medically ineffective to the blatantly inhumane. Practices such as electroconvulsive therapy, prolonged solitary confinement, and crude, unrefined surgical interventions were not rare exceptions but established clinical norms. Poveglia became a destination where individuals could be sent discreetly and then left to vanish from public awareness and memory, a convenient administrative solution for families devoid of answers and for a governmental system operating with minimal public oversight. The main hospital building still stands today. Its brick facade visibly leans under the accumulated weight of decades of exposure to salt-laden sea winds. Plaster peels away from the interior walls in strips resembling aged, flaking skin. Metal hospital beds lie scattered, rusting quietly beneath partially collapsed sections of roof. Wooden doors hang open on broken hinges. Shattered glass from windows crunches underfoot. Official patient records, pages now yellowed and brittle with age, remain strewn across office floors, as if the entire staff departed in a sudden, urgent hurry and never returned to collect their belongings. Every physical artifact of that era is still in situ, preserved in a state of arrested decay, just profoundly silent now. The personal stories originating from that specific historical period are difficult to authenticate and separate from local folklore. Official institutional records are scarce and incomplete, and the majority of what has been passed down through generations arrives in the form of whispered anecdotes among Venetians and the written accounts of adventurous urban explorers. Nevertheless, certain disturbing patterns emerge from these narratives. Tales circulate of systemic patient mistreatment, of severe overcrowding, and of unauthorized medical experimentation. There are accounts alleging that certain physicians conducted unsanctioned procedures, utilizing their confined patients as unwilling test subjects for experimental and often dangerous therapeutic methods. One particular story, repeated frequently though never officially confirmed, speaks of a head physician who was allegedly driven to insanity by the horrific realities of what he witnessed or perhaps what he perpetrated on the island, and who ultimately ended his own life by leaping from the hospital's central bell tower. The psychiatric facility was officially closed down in 1968. No subsequent effort was made to repurpose the buildings. There was no coordinated cleanup operation, no formal memorial erected for the patients. The island was simply sealed off from the world once again, as if the cumulative weight of its history was too immense for any new purpose to ever successfully take root there. Since that final closure, it has remained almost entirely untouched by human hands. There has been no commercial redevelopment, no resident caretakers appointed, only the slow, inexorable, and natural process of structural decay, the relentless reclamation of the land by creeping vegetation, and the expansive, heavy silence that stretches onward, year after successive year. In the present day, the national government of Italy explicitly prohibits all public access to Poveglia Island. The official justification cites legitimate safety concerns, as the abandoned structures are structurally unstable and the terrain is dangerously overgrown. However, the island has acquired a cultural reputation and an aura of dread that proves stronger than any physical fence or official warning sign. It is not merely abandoned. It is actively and instinctively avoided. Local Venetian residents do not go there. Commercial tour boats pass by its shoreline without offering any commentary to their passengers. And while a great many of the sensationalized ghost stories now attached to the island are exaggerated or entirely fictionalized, the authentic, documented history of the place is haunting enough on its own substantial merits. What renders Poveglia so uniquely and profoundly eerie is not solely its decaying architecture or its geographical isolation. It is the stark, unsettling fact that everything has been left precisely in place. The buildings have not been demolished for safety or redevelopment. The painful past has not been paved over or sanitized. It has simply been left completely untouched, a place where the forward march of time did not simply slow, but appears to have stopped entirely. To step onto the island, if one were ever granted the rare opportunity, would feel akin to entering a single, traumatic moment sealed permanently in amber. One would encounter the pervasive smell of damp mildew and salty seawater, the quiet, crunching sound of broken glass under one's shoes, the sight of trees now growing defiantly through abandoned doorways. Every element feels frozen in a specific, sorrowful point in history. The iconic bell tower still stands sentinel. Originally constructed as part of a 12th century church, it was later incorporated into the psychiatric hospital complex to function as an observation tower. It is the tallest structure on the island, and it casts a long, distinct shadow across the ground. Some local legends insist that the bell once rang of its own accord, long after the physical bell had been removed. Others claim to have witnessed unexplained lights flickering in the tower's upper windows or to have heard the sound of phantom footsteps pacing the upper floors. Yet even devoid of these supernatural stories, the tower possesses an undeniable, oppressive presence. It seems to watch perpetually over the island, over the decaying buildings, over the ash-enriched soil, over the forgotten hospital beds, watching, as it has always done. What is particularly unusual about Poveglia is that its most disturbing history is not ancient. This is not a ruin from the Bronze Age or a lost castle from the medieval period. This history is modern. Photographs exist from the hospital's operational era. Medical documentation survives. Family members of former patients may still be living today. The island's final active chapter concluded only a few decades in the past, and yet the atmosphere feels immeasurably older. The passage of time in places burdened by such tragedy seems to stretch and distort differently. In more recent years, there have been several commercial and governmental attempts to revive and repurpose the island. Various proposals have been floated publicly, suggesting its conversion into a luxury hotel complex, a public park, or a historical museum dedicated to its dark past. To date, not a single one of these projects has succeeded. Proposed business deals invariably fall through. Promised funding consistently collapses. Something, whether one attributes it to logistical complications or to something less tangible, always appears to intervene and prevent progress. And so, the island continues to wait. It does not crumble with rapidity. It merely persists, locked in its sorrowful stasis, silent and strangely eerily intact. For historians and researchers who specialize in the study of forgotten places, Poveglia represents a rare phenomenon. It is a complete, self-contained island that has lain untouched for over half a century, with its buildings still standing and its layered history visibly present in every deserted room and corridor. It is not a myth. It is not a legend. It is indisputably real, a quality which serves to make the entire experience of contemplating it all the more unsettling. There is a specific, powerful quality to places of this nature. Locations that are close enough to be plainly seen, yet remain perpetually too far to truly touch. Places whose stories are written not in grand inscriptions upon stone, but in the heavy, echoing language of silence. And Poveglia stands as one of the clearest, most potent examples of how a physical location can carry the immense, enduring weight of what transpired within its boundaries. Without requiring any special effects or theatrical dramatization, it communicates everything necessary through its profound, overwhelming stillness. We may never succeed in uncovering the full, unvarnished truth of everything that happened on Poveglia Island. The surviving official records are fragmentary and incomplete. The individuals who lived, worked, suffered, and died there are now gone, and the island itself offers no explanations. Yet within the peeling walls, among the rusting bed frames, and carried on the whispering breeze through the trees, something intangible yet potent continues to linger. Not ghosts in a paranormal sense, but memory raw, persistent, and inescapable. As we metaphorically depart the Venetian lagoon behind us, the distinct outline of the island gradually fades back into the coastal mist. It becomes once again merely a part of the scenic backdrop, a silent, green shape on the horizon, holding its centuries of secrets tightly within. Our journey now departs from the concealed corridors of Pyongyang, where state secrets are guarded behind steel and enforced quiet, and transports us into a completely different category of peril. This danger is not concealed behind any locked door, but instead lies completely exposed, blazing beneath an open and unforgiving sky, vibrating with searing heat and a kind of chemical fury. Our next destination is a location so incredibly hostile that even the hardiest forms of bacteria struggle to persist there. It is a place where the very ground appears sentient, bubbling, steaming, and shifting unpredictably underfoot. Welcome to the Danakil Depression. Situated within the remote northeastern region of Ethiopia along the contested border with Eritrea, the Danakil Depression occupies one of the lowest points on the entire Earth's surface, resting approximately 100 meters below mean sea level. However, it is not merely its profound depth that distinguishes it. This entire geographical area ranks among the most intensely hot, the most arid, and the most geologically volatile locations on the planet. Ambient temperatures here can readily exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or 49 degrees Celsius, and measurable rainfall is an exceptionally rare, almost non-existent event. Despite this extreme heat and apparent desolation, a form of life does, in fact, exist here, just not the kind you might initially envision. What truly renders the Danakil otherworldly are its infamous acid pools. Dispersed across this sun-scorched terrain are zones where the planetary crust has fractured open, perpetually venting superheated steam, concentrated minerals, and highly acidic gases from deep within the Earth's mantle. Over vast stretches of geological time, these continuous emissions have generated surreal and hallucinogenic landscapes, pools of lethally toxic water displaying brilliant neon-like hues, expansive crusts of bright yellow sulfur, vivid orange salt deposits, and natural geysers that erupt, spewing columns of steam into the shimmering, distorted air. The resulting color palette is visually stunning, even breathtakingly beautiful. Yet one should not be deceived by this spectacle. These colors are not signs of vitality, but rather vivid indicators of profound danger. The most renowned of these sites is an area known as Dallo, a hydrothermal field that is unlike any other environment found on Earth. In this place, the ground is in a state of constant visible flux, continually reshaped by underlying volcanic forces and the immense, grinding pressure of colliding tectonic plates. The atmosphere carries the pervasive, acrid odor of sulfur. The surface pools audibly fizz with escaping carbon dioxide, and beneath the thin, crusted surface, concentrated acids boil and react violently, dissolving surrounding minerals and creating bizarre geological formations that appear almost extraterrestrial in nature. The pH level of these waters can measure below 0 on the logarithmic scale. This statement is not hyperbole, it is chemistry operating at its most extreme and volatile potential. For a significant period, the scientific community operated under the assumption that absolutely nothing could sustain biological life in this environment, no plants, no animals, not even microscopic organisms. However, in more recent years, this long-held belief has been directly challenged. Specialized studies have identified the presence of extremophile microscopic organisms capable of surviving within the most punishing environments on Earth, clinging to existence around the very margins of some of these toxic pools. They are not thriving precisely, but they are enduring, persisting against all apparent odds. Active scientific debate continues as to whether these discoveries represent truly active, indigenous biological life or merely transient remnants inadvertently transported from adjacent, more hospitable regions by wind or rare floodwater. Nevertheless, this possibility introduces an eerie, fundamental question to the place: is biological life possible even within a world that seems utterly and comprehensively designed to reject it? The inherent danger of the Danakil extends far beyond the mere extremity of its heat or the corrosiveness of its acids. The ground itself is treacherously unstable. Surface crusts composed of salt and solidified minerals may appear deceptively solid and supportive, yet directly beneath them, the substrate can give way suddenly to concealed boiling pools or sharp, crystalline chemical deposits. Taking a single misplaced step could cause the fragile crust to fracture under a person's weight, potentially plunging them into a scalding, corrosive liquid capable of inflicting severe chemical burns or causing far worse consequences. There are no formally marked safe trails here, no protective perimeter fences, and no cautionary signs, only a silent, mutual understanding among the very few individuals who dare to venture into this zone. This is not a location that permits or forgives mistakes. Despite these overwhelming hazards, human communities have inhabited the outermost fringes of this hostile landscape for many centuries. The Afar people, a resilient nomadic ethnic group with profound ancestral roots in the region, have developed the specialized knowledge required to navigate Danakil's myriad dangers with immense care and respect. For countless generations, they have manually harvested valuable salt from the expansive nearby flats, carving thick rectangular blocks by hand and organizing their transportation via traditional camel caravans. This is arduous, perilous labor performed beneath a merciless, punishing sun. Yet it continues uninterrupted, forming a tangible economic link between modern Ethiopia and ancient trade networks that stretch back for hundreds of years. However, no human settlements exist deep within the active acid pool fields themselves. No permanent homes are constructed there. No agricultural crops are cultivated. The heart of the Danakil Depression remains fundamentally empty, profoundly desolate, astonishingly colorful, and perpetually seething with a kind of inorganic chemical vitality. It is not rendered forbidden by any human law or decree, as with a place like Room 39, but by the raw, ungovernable power of nature itself. To spend any amount of time within this landscape is to experience the unnerving sensation of being observed not by other people, but by the land itself, which seems to pulse with a slow, silent, and inscrutable energy. From a geological perspective, the region is utterly fascinating. The Danakil Depression constitutes a critical segment of the larger Afar Triple Junction, a point where three separate tectonic plates, the African Plate, the Arabian Plate, and the Somali Plate, are gradually pulling away from one another. This active continental rifting generates constant volcanic activity, frequent minor earthquakes, and the continuous release of subterranean gases. It is a location where a new planetary crust is literally being born, torn from the existing continental mass inch by geological inch. Over the course of millions of years, this rift could potentially evolve into the basin for a new ocean. For the present moment, however, it manifests as a vast, boiling, toxic wound upon the skin of the African continent. It is this foundational geological violence that directly fuels the existence of the acid pools. Groundwater, originating from either deep underground aquifer from extremely brief seasonal floods, slowly percolates down into the fractured crust, where it is superheated by proximate magma chambers. This scalding, mineral-laden fluid then returns violently to the surface through hydrothermal vents and geysers, carrying with it a rich cocktail of dissolved minerals and reactive chemicals. Upon contact with the atmosphere and surface salt deposits, these compounds undergo rapid chemical reactions, generating the bizarre and beautiful landscapes we observe: mineral mounds that resemble underwater coral reefs, crystalline formations that look like the ruins of alien cities, and colors that shift dramatically with the angle of sunlight, ranging from electric lime green to deep, bloody crimson. The peril inherent in this surreal beauty is entirely authentic. Any tourists or researchers granted permission to visit are explicitly warned not to make physical contact with anything. Dipping a finger into a pool out of curiosity is strictly prohibited. Attempting to pick up a crusted salt formation as a souvenir is forbidden. The gases being emitted, particularly chlorine, sulfur dioxide, and carbon dioxide, can overwhelm the human respiratory system with alarming speed. In topographical depressions or enclosed pockets, these heavier than air gases can displace breathable oxygen entirely, creating instant, invisible death traps. And the acids present are not merely corrosive to metal. They are immediately and lethally toxic to organic tissue. Nevertheless, this forbidding place continues to draw focused scientific attention. Researchers study it intently to better comprehend the absolute limits of biological life on Earth and to formulate hypotheses about what forms life might take in similarly extreme environments on other worlds. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration has expressed particular interest, viewing the Danakil as a crucial terrestrial analog for understanding the extreme surface conditions on Mars or the subsurface oceans on icy moons like Jupiter's Europa. It stands as one of the very few places on our own planet that could potentially help humanity answer profound questions about biology and chemistry elsewhere in the cosmos. There is also something peculiarly, profoundly quiet about the Danakil, not merely an absence of animal noise or human activity, but a deeper quality, a sense that the entire landscape exists in a state of suspension, as if it is perpetually waiting. The hot air shimmers visibly, the vibrant colors seem to pulse with a low energy, and the land itself continuously hisses and steams, creating an ambient sound that feels less like background noise and more like a persistent, whispered warning to keep moving, to not linger. Even the most seasoned scientists who have studied it for years discuss the Danakil with a distinct tone of reverence. It is not a place that offers any form of welcome. It merely tolerates the temporary presence of visitors for a limited duration. The vast majority of people will never personally witness the Danakil Depression, and this circumstance is likely for the best. The access roads are brutally rough, the climate is relentlessly brutal, and the risks are omnipresent and constant. Yet even from the safety of great distance, its mere existence serves as a powerful reminder that our planet still harbors places that seem entirely untouched by and utterly indifferent to human civilization. Places where the fundamental rules of habitability are completely different, where breathtaking beauty and instantaneous mortal danger occupy the exact same physical space, and where life, if it persists at all, clings desperately to the very precipice of the impossible. The acid pools of the Danakil Depression are not famous in the manner of the Grand Canyon or Mount Everest. They are not typical postcard destinations. They do not appear on standard travel guide checklists. Yet they are undeniably extraordinary. They actively defy our conventional expectations of what the Earth can be, and they sit in remote silence, pulsing with geothermal heat in one of the globe's most isolated corners. To examine a photograph of the Dalal hydrothermal field is to instinctively question its authenticity. The scene appears too vividly colored, too bizarrely formed to be real. But it is absolutely real. It exists there at this very moment, bubbling, burning, and shifting imperceptibly. And it will continue to exist there long after any human observer has departed unchanged, unbothered, and utterly self-contained. It possesses no need for us, and perhaps this self-sufficient indifference is the very quality that renders it so profoundly mysterious and compelling. Because not every single place in our world is intended for human exploration or comprehension. Some are meant simply to exist on their own sovereign terms, according to their own ancient geological timetable. The Danakil Depression may be precisely one of those places, beautiful, supremely hostile, silent, and alive in chemical and geological ways that we, as a species, still do not fully understand. From landscapes that can scorch the skin and stain the sky with plumes of steam, we now turn our gaze and drift outward toward the opens. We now travel away from the dense, perilous rainforests, heading far to the south, deep into the frigid, deep quiet of the sub-Antarctic region. This is a place unfamiliar to most people's awareness, and an even smaller number will ever witness it personally. A tiny speck of volcanic stone rising defiantly from the vast expanse of the Southern Ocean, perpetually assaulted by fierce winds and towering waves, and frequently cloaked in thick banks of sea fog. This is Saunders Island, and near its remote geographical center, veiled beneath layers of permanent snow and ancient ice, something extraordinary, rare, and quietly terrifying smolders and burns just beneath the visible surface. Mount Michael. It is not the most towering volcano on the planet, nor is it the most violently explosive. Yet it conceals one of the Earth's most elusive and singular geological phenomena, a feature found in only a minuscule number of locations across the entire globe. A permanent lava lake. A seething, incandescent pool of molten magma that bubbles and churns continuously day and night, surrounded by a hostile world of frost, ice, and freezing mist. Only a handful of such persistent lava lakes are confirmed to exist anywhere on Earth. Mount Michael is the sole known example situated within such an extreme and profoundly isolated environment. Furthermore, It required scientists and researchers multiple decades to definitively confirm that it was even there. Saunders Island belongs to the South Sandwich Islands archipelago, a chain of volcanic islands situated almost precisely halfway between the frozen continent of Antarctica and the southernmost tip of South America. It is officially administered as a British overseas territory, yet it possesses no functioning airport, no sheltered port facilities, and absolutely no permanent human residence. There exists only the unceasing wind, vast fields of snow, and layers of volcanic ash. Mount Michael ascends from this utterly uninhabited landmass like a slumbering, ancient deity. Its slopes are heavily mantled with glaciers and perennial ice fields. Its summit is nearly perpetually obscured by thick, swirling clouds. On exceptionally clear days, a faint but unmistakable plume of steam can be observed rising from its volcanic crater. For many years, volcanologists and geologists strongly suspected the presence of a lava lake concealed within the deep crater of Mount Michael. Intermittent satellite imagery captured over the years revealed distinct thermal signatures consistent with an intense, concentrated heat source. However, no human being had ever directly observed it. The local weather in this region transforms with alarming rapidity, sometimes shifting completely within a single hour, and the terrain is exceptionally harsh, even by the unforgiving standards of polar environments. Attempting to ascend the volcano would necessitate confronting unstable volcanic scree, hidden glacial crevasses, and hurricane-force winds capable of physically knocking a person to the ground. For decades, the lava lake's existence remained an unconfirmed scientific hypothesis. This long-standing uncertainty finally changed in the year 2019. Advanced satellite data collection and highly sensitive infrared imaging technology at last provided a sufficient volume of consistent, unambiguous evidence to definitively resolve the question. The lava lake was irrefutably real, measuring roughly 100 to 200 meters in width, in a state of constant molten activity, and situated deep within the volcano's summit caldera. It had been present there the entire time, boiling relentlessly in one of the most isolated and inaccessible locations anywhere on the planet. To discover a persistent lava lake is an exceptionally rare event in geology. The majority of volcanoes undergo cycles of eruption followed by cooling and dormancy. A permanent lava lake represents an entirely different volcanic state. It is a continuously churning, open reservoir of molten rock that neither erupts cataclysmically nor fully solidifies. It simply simmers and seethes. The most well-known and studied examples of such lakes exist in locations like Hawaii, Ethiopia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo regions where scientific researchers can observe and monitor them with a degree of relative safety. Mount Michael, by stark contrast, maintains its profound and deliberate distance. Its lava lake has likely existed for many decades, perhaps even longer, yet it remains almost completely unexamined by direct human observation. The very concept that a lake of literal fire can endure within such an utterly frozen landscape is unsettling in its own quiet, profound manner. The surface of Saunders Island is typically encrusted in thick ice. Colonies of penguins establish their nesting sites on the island's lower, gentler slopes. The surrounding sea is congested with drifting pack ice and subjected to monumental storm swells. And yet, beneath this mountain's icy outer shell, there exists a sealed chamber containing molten rock, sustained by immense geothermal heat radiating from deep within the Earth's interior. The effect is akin to the collision of two separate worlds, one composed entirely of snow and ice, the other forged from primal flame. The lava lake itself remains entirely invisible from any ground-level perspective. It resides deep within the confines of the volcanic crater, concealed by steep, unstable walls and the near-constant shroud of cloud cover. Even if an expedition were to successfully reach the mountain's summit, Actually seeing the lake would require a combination of near-perfect atmospheric clarity and precisely positioned vantage point conditions that almost never converge in this volatile region. The majority of the knowledge we currently possess originates from orbital satellites, which manage to capture fleeting glimpses of the lake's intense heat signature through temporary breaks in the cloud canopy. It is this profound inaccessibility that endows Mount Michael with its uniquely eerie presence. There exists no dramatic video footage of its lava lake, no glowing scarlet pool filmed from circling helicopters, only abstract thermal images and low-resolution hazy satellite photographs. A collection of faint, remote readings collected from high above, and the persistent scientific knowledge that something immense and fiery is perpetually burning out there, always positioned just beyond the reach of direct human experience. The precise geological mechanisms that maintain the stability of this particular lava lake remain uncertain to science. Persistent lava lakes are sustained by a delicate and dynamic equilibrium between heat input, subsurface pressure, and the regulated flow of volcanic gases. If an excessive volume of gas escapes, the exposed lava can rapidly cool and solidify into solid rock. If insufficient gas is released, pressure can build until it triggers an explosive eruption. Somehow, Mount Michael maintains this precarious balance quietly and relentlessly. Its lake does not roar or erupt violently. It simply persists, a constant geothermal phenomenon. There is something inherently haunting about this sustained, silent activity. It lacks the dramatic spectacle of a volcanic eruption. It is instead a constant, unseen presence, a reminder that the Earth is always dynamically active beneath our feet, even in its most desolate and lonely places. Mount Michael is not monitored by crowds of spectators. It does not pose a direct threat to any major cities or disrupt international aviation routes. It burns with a quiet intensity in the polar darkness, a geological whisper emanating from the middle of a vast, empty ocean. Moreover, unlike other famous lava lakes around the world, which have been extensively studied, photographed, and even cautiously approached by scientists, this one remains almost completely untouched by human investigation. No dedicated research team has ever managed to descend into its crater. No specialized instrument has directly measured the composition of its gases or meticulously mapped its subterranean shape. It exists in a state of near total isolation, discovered in a technical sense, yet not truly or intimately explored. The broader geographical region surrounding Mount Michael only deepens its mystery. The South Sandwich Islands form part of a volcanic arc generated by the immense tectonic process of subduction, where the dense South American plate is slowly forced beneath the smaller South Sandwich plate. This colossal subterranean collision generates frequent seismic activity and persistent volcanism throughout the island chain. While most islands in the archipelago exhibit some form of volcanic activity, Mount Michael stands out for its remarkable consistency. Its eruptions are generally mild yet ongoing. Steam plumes rise regularly. Occasional ash is dispersed into the sky, but through it all, the lava lake remains, a permanent fiery heart beating beneath the perpetual clouds. Physically reaching the island presents a monumental logistical challenge. Saunders Island possesses no natural harbors. Large ships cannot safely dock alongside it. Researchers must attempt hazardous landings using small inflatable boats, then undertake arduous hikes across unstable volcanic terrain in freezing, gale-force conditions. Utilizing helicopters is virtually impossible due to the ferocious and unpredictable winds. And even if one miraculously attained the rim of the crater, the sheer vertical drop and the omnipresent, dense fog would almost certainly obscure any direct view of the lake below. Despite these overwhelming obstacles, Mount Michael has evolved into a compelling subject of intense fascination for volcanologists and remote sensing specialists globally. It represents a rare geological feature situated within an equally rare and extreme environment. Its existence prompts fundamental questions about the inner workings of our planet, about the specific conditions that can sustain a lava lake over geological timescales, and about the vast scope of knowledge we still lack. Because Mount Michael is, in essence, still largely a scientific question mark, albeit a glowing, intensely hot one. It serves as a powerful reminder that even in our contemporary era of sophisticated satellites, advanced drones, and comprehensively digitized global maps, there persist parts of this world that remain essentially unmeasured and unexamined. Places where nature itself refuses to grant easy access or provide clear, simple answers. In certain profound ways, this hidden lava lake functions as a perfect metaphor for the Earth itself, active, concealed, and quietly immensely powerful. We possess the technological certainty that it is there. We can remotely measure its thermal output, but we have not witnessed it with our own eyes. Not directly, not yet, and so it continues to burn, an eternal ember situated in the coldest, most remote corner of the planet, sees unwatched, untouched, a flicker of primordial fire in a place where no human being was ever meant to linger. Now, we leave behind these distant, windswept islands and their volcanic peaks, turning our journey toward calmer oceanic waters. Yet the profound quiet we find there will carry a weight and a mystery all its own. Far out in the vast, empty expanse of the South Atlantic Ocean, located almost precisely midway between the southernmost coastline of Africa and the frigid periphery of Antarctica, sits a small island that very few individuals have ever heard mentioned, and an even smaller number have ever actually laid eyes upon. Bouvet Island, measuring a mere 19 square miles in total area, is composed of volcanic rock, ancient glaciers, and sheer, vertical cliffs, and it is encircled by some of the most treacherous and violent ocean waters found anywhere on Earth. It is so profoundly remote, so utterly isolated, that it holds the unambiguous title of the most inaccessible island on the entire planet. No human beings reside there. There exists no protected harbor, no landing airstrip, and no permanent research station of any kind. And yet, it remains a place that continues to stir a persistent, quiet curiosity. Not primarily because of what is confirmed to be present upon it, but rather because of what is conspicuously absent. Bouvet Island is, from a legal and political standpoint, a territory of the Kingdom of Norway, claimed in the early decades of the 20th century and formally designated as a nature reserve during the 1970s. It possesses no known history of sustained human habitation, no indigenous folklore or mythology, and no native human population whatsoever. The island is almost perpetually surrounded by thick sea ice. The nearest significant landmass lies over 1,000 miles distant, and the prevailing weather is unrelentingly severe, brutal, constant wind, freezing rain, sleet, and an ever-present, a dense fog that rolls in from the sea like a heavy, impenetrable curtain. Air temperatures consistently hover just below the freezing point throughout the entire year. It is the quintessential kind of place where nature is left entirely to its own devices, and where any object or structure not created by natural forces immediately stands out as an anomaly. The island's physical form is that of a domed mass of ice and solidified lava, created by ancient volcanic activity. It rises sharply and dramatically from the deep ocean floor, with such steep coastal cliffs that any attempt at a boat landing is rendered nearly impossible. Only a single small sliver of exposed coastline, known as Nair Yisa, or New Rock, offers a potential spot where helicopters can on extremely rare occasions land during fleeting windows of calm weather. Scientific researchers have utilized this precarious landing zone to install automated weather monitoring stations or to collect limited geological and biological samples, but these visits are exceptionally infrequent and of very brief duration. No one remains for an extended period on Bouvet Island. The environment itself does not permit it. The overwhelming majority of the island's surface is buried beneath a thick, heavy glacial ice sheet that covers more than 90% of its total area. There are no trees, no grass, and barely any form of terrestrial life beyond a few hardy species of moss and lichen clinging to bare rock, and the vast colonies of seabirds that nest precariously along the towering cliffs. Petrels and skuas glide and wheel over the windswept, icy plateau, while populations of seals and penguins congregate in the frigid, nutrient-rich waters below. The prevailing acoustic atmosphere is one of near-total silence, broken only by the ceaseless howl of the wind and the thunderous sound of massive waves slamming violently against the unyielding rock. It is a place that feels untouched, not merely by human civilization, but by the very passage of time itself. And yet, for an island that is so profoundly isolated and seemingly uneventful, Bouvet possesses a handful of peculiar stories that remain entirely unexplained. The most well-documented and enduring mystery dates back to the year 1964. A British scientific expedition, led by a Royal Navy weather observation ship, approached the island during the course of a rare logistical mission. The persistent sea ice had temporarily parted just long enough to allow a small survey team to attempt an investigation. They successfully landed at the Nur Isa area and commenced their standard scientific survey procedures. However, as they moved cautiously across the rocky shoreline, they encountered something utterly unexpected: a lifeboat. This vessel was in remarkably good condition, sturdy, fully intact, and clearly positioned there deliberately, not simply washed ashore by random wave action. In close proximity to the boat were a few weathered storage barrels, some scattered debris, and other subtle signs indicating that someone had been present there relatively recently. Yet there were no discernible footprints in the surrounding snow, no people present, no explanatory notes left behind, and no logical rationale for its presence. The specific ship from which this lifeboat might have originated was never successfully identified by maritime authorities, and no nation, company, or individual ever came forward to claim it or explain its provenance. Within the immense, trackless vastness of the Southern Ocean, the sudden appearance of an intact, abandoned lifeboat on an island that possesses no harbor, no human settlements, and no clear reason for anyone to visit, inevitably raises far more questions than it could possibly answer. Was there a nearby, unreported shipwreck whose fate remains unknown? Had a desperate crew attempted to use Bouvet Island as an emergency refuge, only to subsequently vanish without a trace? Was the boat simply left behind by a previous, unrecorded expedition and then forgotten? Or does its origin point to something else entirely? Despite subsequent attempts by investigators and historians to trace its origin, the lifeboat endures as one of Bouvet Island's most famous and insoluble riddles. It is, however, not the island's only unexplained artifact. In 1955, a separate South African expedition that managed a brief landing also reported discovering strange, unidentified structures, several unmarked metal poles, a single, severely weathered hut, and various pieces of discarded mechanical debris. Yet there was no clear indicator of who had left these items behind, or when they had been placed there. Later scientific visits to the island could not definitively confirm what had been described in the original report. The historical accounts remain vague, and the specific details are scattered and inconsistent. But much like the mysterious lifeboat, these reports contributed significantly to the island's growing reputation as a place where objects and evidence inexplicably appear without any clear cause or provenance, only to seemingly vanish or become obscured just as mysteriously. Due to Bouvet Island's extreme geographical remoteness and its complete lack of regular human oversight, It has naturally become a fertile ground for conspiracy theories and speculative fiction. Some theorists have suggested it was covertly utilized during the height of the Cold War as a secret military observation point or as a potential emergency shelter for clandestine operations. Others, pointing to the total absence of surveillance, posit that it represents the perfect location to test experimental technologies or to hide sensitive materials. In 2004, it even served as the fictional setting for an ancient alien pyramid base in the Hollywood film of Alien vs. Predator. Yet none of these imaginative theories have ever been substantiated by any verifiable, factual evidence. For the most part, the island has remained exactly what it superficially appears to be: a profoundly lonely, perpetually icy outpost situated in the absolute middle of nowhere. Its genuine scientific value, however, is very real and significant. Bouvet Island forms a critical part of the unique and fragile ecosystem of sub-Antarctic islands, harsh, isolated places that provide scientists with invaluable insights into how biological life adapts and survives at the very edge of viable habitability. The island's glaciers are carefully monitored as sensitive indicators of global climate change. The surrounding ocean waters are integral components of vast, global current systems that help regulate climatic and weather patterns across the entire planet, far beyond the boundaries of the southern hemisphere. Furthermore, because the island remains so utterly untouched by direct human activity, it serves as a kind of pristine environmental baseline, a living example of what the natural world looks like in the complete absence of human interference. But even acknowledging all this legitimate scientific importance, Bouvet Island still tenaciously holds onto its core aura of mystery. There is something fundamentally compelling about its absolute silence, its daunting inaccessibility, its total and sublime indifference to human presence or ambition. It does not invite stories of adventure, it seems to actively resist them. It does not appear to want visitors in any capacity. And yet, it persists, out there in the perpetual fog, always frozen, always distant, always present. Examining modern satellite imagery, Bouvet Island appears as little more than a faint, indistinct smudge upon the surface of the ocean, a jagged, dark outline surrounded by the chaotic swirls of white sea ice and gray cloud cover. During the long Antarctic winter months, even this faint signature often vanishes completely beneath a blanket of storm clouds and blowing snow. Commercial ships routinely pass hundreds of miles away without any awareness of its existence. Aircraft almost never fly anywhere near its airspace. There are no established international flight paths, no major fishing routes, and no maritime trade lanes that come within visual range. It is not situated on the way to any other destination, which renders its exceedingly rare human visitors and the enigmatic traces they occasionally leave behind all the more striking and perplexing. One could persuasively argue that Bouvet Island's greatest, most profound mystery is not the abandoned lifeboat, nor the reports of strange equipment, nor even the persistent absence of clear answers. Its greatest mystery is the island's own existence and its powerful psychological pull. Why is such a place so compelling? Why, in a contemporary world that feels so thoroughly mapped, so precisely measured, and so completely documented, can a single, frozen rock at the literal end of the earth still exert such a powerful grip on the human imagination? Perhaps the answer lies in the simple, humbling knowledge that this place exists, a real, tangible location situated so far beyond the boundaries of where the vast majority of us will ever physically travel. It serves as a potent reminder that not every corner of our planet has been touched, cataloged, or fully explained, that there still remain places where absolute silence is the ruling force, where the wind carries no human stories back to civilization. And perhaps that is the fundamental reason we feel drawn to it. Not with an intent to conquer it, nor even with a firm expectation to fully understand it, but simply to know with certainty that it is there. To know that out in the immense, lonely reaches of the South Atlantic, far beyond the edges of conventional maps, beyond the reach of any roads or railways, there persists an island of eternal ice enshrouding fog, where nothing human lives and nothing human made lingers for long. A place that actively resists intrusion, that silently endures the ages, and that simply, stubbornly remains. And so, Bouvet Island sits as it always has and likely always will, weathered by endless storms, watching over an empty sea and waiting. From the cold, howling winds of this most remote island, our journey now moves not further into the wilderness, but behind locked doors and into places of deliberate concealment. We now turn our journey far to the north, deep into the piercing cold of the Arctic Circle, where the land remains locked in ice for the majority of the year, and where relentless winds carve their paths across stark white mountains with nothing to impede their passage. Here, nestled deep within the permafrost of a remote Norwegian island, rests a facility that is not ancient, yet feels as though it belongs to an entirely different world. It is a vault interred within a frozen hillside, holding within its silent chambers a quiet promise of renewal. This is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, one of the most secure, remote, and symbolically powerful locations on Earth. Svalbard itself is an expansive archipelago situated in the Arctic Ocean, positioned roughly midway between the northern coast of mainland Norway and the geographic North Pole. It is a realm of severe and stark beauty, characterized by sharp, rugged mountains, deep icy fjords, and a population of polar bears that actually outnumbers its human inhabitants. The largest human settlement is the small town of Longyearbyen, a place where daylight can vanish entirely for several months during the polar winter, and where the ground is so permanently frozen that traditional burials have been legally prohibited, because the permafrost will not allow a body to decompose. It is here, carved directly into a mountain known as Plateau Birgit, that the Global Seed Vault was constructed. From an external perspective, the structure resembles something from a minimalist science fiction film. A long, utilitarian concrete tunnel protrudes from a snowy slope, terminating in a geometric facade of steel and glass that emits a cold, blue glow during the endless polar night. There exists no grand ceremonial entrance, no visible staff, and no daily traffic of any kind. The vault is meticulously designed to be unassuming, silent, and supremely secure. But behind that formidable door lies something quietly extraordinary: over 1 million distinct seed samples, representing the complete genetic diversity of essential crops from every corner of our world. The underlying concept is elegant in its simplicity, yet profound in its implication. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault functions as a global biological backup drive for the planet's agricultural heritage. It is a preemptive safety net designed for a scenario where disaster, whether natural or human-made, obliterates local seed banks or threatens to drive vital crop species into extinction. Nations from across the globe have dispatched samples of their most crucial seeds here, each variety sealed within special foil packets and secured inside standardized boxes. Every single sample represents a tiny, tangible safeguard for humanity's future food security. Wheat, rice, maize, lentils, barley, every staple crop imaginable, alongside thousands of obscure varieties you have never heard of, now rest in the cold, dark silence of this Arctic sanctuary. The specific location was selected with immense care. Svalbard is geologically stable and exceptionally remote, far removed from active war zones, major seismic fault lines, and dense population centers. The mountain's natural permafrost provides a constant source of passive refrigeration, guaranteeing the seeds remain frozen solid, even in the unlikely event all mechanical cooling systems permanently fail. The vault's entrance is constructed well above current sea level, engineered to remain impervious to flooding even in the face of climate change-induced sea level rise. It is a facility intended to endure for centuries, and potentially for millennia should the need ever arise. Yet, for all its pragmatic purpose and forward-thinking design, there is something quietly eerie about the Seed Vault. It is, in many significant ways, a time capsule constructed for a future we desperately hope never arrives. It is a bunker designed not for people, but for pure potential for biological continuity. It is the kind of place that implicitly suggests, without ever uttering a word, that someone somewhere is soberly contemplating how our world might one day fracture and how we might possibly begin to piece it back together. The vault officially opened its doors in 2008, following years of international planning and complex construction. Since that inaugural moment, it has accepted shipments of seeds from nearly every continent on Earth. Within its chambers now rest seeds from Syrian farms that have ceased to exist, preserved just in time before protracted war turned fertile fields to dust. There are seeds rescued from gene banks in other nations that have succumbed to fire, flood, or financial ruin. It presents a poignant paradox. The world's most hopeful facility exists fundamentally because of fear, a collective fear of systemic collapse, of permanent extinction, and of irrevocable forgetting. The building interior is predominantly empty space. There is no permanent staff stationed inside. For the vast majority of time, it remains sealed, cold, and profoundly quiet. Access is heavily restricted, and even for those with official clearance, visits are exceedingly rare. Seeds are deposited with the solemn understanding that, in theory, they will only be withdrawn if a catastrophic loss occurs elsewhere. In 2015, this theoretical scenario became a reality for the first time. The devastating civil war in Syria compelled international researchers to retrieve seeds from the vault that had originally been stored by an agricultural research center in Aleppo. The vault was utilized exactly as its creators intended, as a lifeline thrown backward through time to pull something essential forward into an uncertain future. Inside, the architecture is austere and functional. A long, gently sloping access tunnel leads deep into the heart of the mountain. From this main corridor, 3 separate, high-security storage chambers branch off. Currently, only one of these chambers is actively in use. The air within is cold, extremely dry, and perfectly still. Metal shelving units line the reinforced walls, and upon these shelves sit many thousands of identical white boxes. Each box is filled with meticulously sealed seed packets, each one carefully labeled, cataloged, and preserved for posterity. There is no sound but the faint, almost imperceptible hum of the refrigeration machinery. There is no movement save for the occasional, subtle shift of frost crystallizing along a steel beam. However, it is not merely the physical depth and the penetrating chill that imbue the vault with its mysterious aura. It is the overwhelming feeling of latent potential. Every single seed resting in that vault represents thousands of years of cumulative agricultural history, the ancient domestication of wild grasses, the careful, generational selection of desirable traits, the epic migration of staple crops across continents and cultures, the beautiful fusion of ancestral knowledge with modern scientific understanding. These are not merely seeds, they are living stories, and they are profound hopes. If a modern disease were to decimate a contemporary wheat strain, a long-forgotten, hardy variety preserved from the highlands of Ethiopia might contain the genetic key to resistance. If climate change radically alters global rainfall patterns, a drought-tolerant millet preserved from ancient India might hold the secret to adaptation. The vault safeguards not just future food, but future solutions to possible answers to problems we have not yet even encountered. It also functions as a unique kind of museum, though not one open for public tours. There are no curated exhibits, no explanatory plaques, and certainly no gift shop, only a locked door set into a frozen mountain. And behind that door rests the living memory of what humanity has cultivated, what we have nourished ourselves with, and what we might desperately need to cultivate once again, someday. The very existence of this seed vault raises subtle yet deeply unsettling questions. Why did we feel the necessity to construct this? What does its creation say about the contemporary world we have built? That a global safety deposit box for the very foundation of our food supply has become not merely a useful precaution, but an apparent necessity. Its presence is both profoundly comforting and strangely haunting, a brilliant testament to human ingenuity and foresight, yet also a quiet, sobering acknowledgement of our profound collective vulnerability. And still, it sits in the polar dark. The Arctic night envelops the landscape for months on end. Driving snow routinely buries the visible entrance. The aurora borealis flickers and dances in the sky above in silent, celestial spectacles. And deep within the mountain, encased in silver foil and detailed paper records, a whisper from our agricultural past waits patiently, poised to one day feed the future. In our current digital age, where so much is ephemeral data, the Svalbard Global Seed Vault remains stubbornly, fundamentally physical. You cannot simply download a seed. A seed must be planted, nurtured, and kept alive through care and cultivation. And if a unique seed variety vanishes from the earth, you cannot merely click a button to restore it from a cloud backup. This irreducible physicality is precisely what makes this vault so critically important and so conceptually strange. It is a place we fervently hope is never required for its primary purpose, and yet we have come to rely upon its silent assurance all the same. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault is not hidden in the manner of an ancient tomb or a remote, forgotten island. Yet it is sealed off in a different, equally potent sense, guarded not by stone or legend, but by relentless cold, formidable distance, and unambiguous intent. It stands as one of the very few modern constructions that feels genuinely timeless, not because of great age, but because of the gravity and longevity of its purpose. As the Arctic wind howls across the endless ice, and the stars glint like sharp frost in the sky above the horizon, the vault simply waits, quiet, cold, and paradoxically full of dormant life. Our world remains filled with places we were never truly meant to see. Locations that actively challenge our comfortable ideas of what is familiar, what is safe, and what lies perpetually just beyond our reach. Some are sealed away by governmental decree, others by the immutable laws of nature itself. But all of them, without exception, serve to remind us how vastly immense and fundamentally strange our planet continues to be. For every gleaming city skyline and every crowded modern highway, there still exist deserts where no human walks, islands where no one dares to land, and fortified corridors engineered to be entered only when every other option has utterly failed. Tonight, together, we have journeyed through a curated selection of these extraordinary places, from windswept cliffs to boiling acid pools, from Arctic vaults to hidden government bunkers. And while we may never personally set foot in these forbidden corners of the earth, it can be enough, sometimes, simply to know that they exist, to feel the palpable weight of their silence, and to ponder the profound mysteries they steadfastly hold. If this journey through the inaccessible, the abandoned, and the deeply unknown has captivated your imagination, we would be honored if you joined our community of curious explorers. Subscribe to Forbidden Fathoms to ensure you never miss our next descent into mystery. Let us know which of these forbidden places chilled or intrigued you the most. Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. There are always more layers to uncover, more stories waiting in the shadows, and we are only just beginning. Thank you for watching, and as always, until our next adventure, stay curious and stay safe.